Welcome, Cherries fans, to this latest show here on Up the Cherries in all departments. And it's a special one, and we're doing the tier list. If you've watched some of the shows already during the summer, we have got a difference in opinion. So it's going to be interesting because we've got to pick this tier list between the three of us. So my first guest, of course, you recognise him. It's Mr. Matthew Harrison. How you doing?
All good, Craig. Pleasure to see you, and Manny as well. It's nice to have our Friday morning threesome back.
Exactly. And welcome back, Manny. How's the summer been?
Yeah, the summer's been good. Just keeping active, doing a few things, learning me some German. You never know when it can come in handy. And as both of you might know, I've also been trying to pump a little bit of iron. One thing which I can tell you is that the older you get, if you don't use your muscles, you're going to lose them.
There we are. There is the advice. So get learning, get up the gym, and keep the brain active and keep the body active. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Manny's tip of the week.
There we go.
Or alternatively, you could do what Craig does: you go to the gym and have a burger and chips straight after. But anyway, that's a different.
No, listen. No, that's the thing. It's not a cheat; it's a treat. So
that's it.
You can think of your burger and chips and use that as a motivation to go even harder than last time. I love that.
That's what Craig tells himself Monday to Friday when he's in the gym.
I think the muscles are there, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you got that line running down your forearm, mate. That's good. I mean, just keep working on the benches and the flies, and you're perfect. Benches and flies, and then look, a few sit-ups, maybe some squats, you'll be fine. But remember, benches and fries, and then your burger and your fries.
There we are. See, Matt, that told you. Although might be back to having 2 burgers at half time.
Oh, mate.
Well, the football's restarting. We got a friendly this weekend against Lorient. We're going to be there, and plus, season's only a week away, and of course, got some more exciting news coming up very, very soon. But I'm going to leave that until I've been, and then I will put up all the details about that as well. So we are doing the tier list, and shall I introduce the tier list to everybody so they can see what it looks like? It's empty at the moment. So how this is going to work is we are going to pick our champion of the Premier League, then the 3 teams in the Champions League, the teams in the Europa League and the Europa Conference League, then the mid-table teams, just staying up, 15th to 17th, and then the 3 going down. The team on the left-hand side, so for the Champions League places, for example, there's 3 teams in there. The team furthest to the left will be the team that will finish second. So it'll be left to right, second, third, fourth, and then in Europe, it'll be 5th and 6th on the left-hand side, and then 7th furthest along. So that is how it's all going to work. And then once we've got all the teams in there, we can then play around and, make sure that we agree try and agree with it. So there we go. That is what that tier list looks like. So what we could do, let's get underway with it. And the first person to pick a team, I think we should give it to Manny. So, Manny, which team are you going with first out of those?
Yeah, well, I think it might be a surprise to some people, but it's not a surprise to a few others. I'm not going to pick my team just yet, which is, of course, Arsenal, but I will pick a team which I do happen to have a soft spot for several reasons. And I think the way they've, developed and really improved since coming back into the Premier League has been nothing short of amazing. Certainly last season was a miracle. The Birmingham team, Aston Villa.
Aston Villa. So let's do a little bit of a look at Aston Villa and what their season was like last season. So Unai Emery is the boss. We've also had Mikel Sarri on, who doesn't know Unai Emery, and which was an incredible interview. Of course, Mikel Ekstari was the Basque Country manager, and therefore was a teacher for a lot of the Basque managers. So last season finished 7th, FA Cup 3rd round, EFL Cup 3rd round. Top scorer was Ollie Watkins. Of course, Unai Emery wasn't there all season. Steven Gerrard was there at the start. Of course, that man in the corner, that bottom right-hand corner, set a couple of Aston Villa fans off after his comments in our season preview show. But he does predict they're going to be Euro challengers. And Matt, do you want to go through the players in and out so far?
Yeah, so there's well, I think Villa have had a pretty decent transfer window. Yuri Talisman from Leicester on a free. I mean, what a signing. I think he's a quality player. They've managed to sign Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen, and also Torres from Villarreal, who I believe is a centre-back. So they've spent some decent money. Obviously, there's some noticeable players that have left as well, the likes of Jed Steer, who'd been there for quite some years, and obviously Ashley Young, who have moved on. But all in all, with the squad that's already there, with the manager that's in place, and the signings they've made, I think they are set to have a decent season.
And there is the stats on there. So, of course, everybody's played 38 games. They won 18, 13 losses, 51 goals last season, 46 conceded. But that doesn't tell its own story, because, of course, a lot of that season was played under Steven Gerrard. They did look at one point like they was going to potentially be in trouble. And then Unai Emery managed to get them into Europe.
Yes, he did.
A remarkable achievement there.
Yeah.
Quite a well-disciplined team as well, aren't they, really?
They are.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing. Sorry, Manny, carry on. No,
Yeah. So one of the things which has really impressed me so much about Unai Emery and the way he got the team playing was that he obviously went with the classic 4-4-2 formation, which is he got it to be a bit more attacking. So obviously he had Emi Martinez in goal, world champion, of course, and also, like Emery, ex-Arsenal. And you also are quite familiar with a certain Tyrone Mings, who is, of course, a former Cherry. And the way he was able to return to something like his best after the whole captaincy fiasco with Steven Gerrard was quite remarkable. He and Ezri Konsa did quite well. Ashley Young it was quite sad to see him leave, but I think the club were probably being a little bit ruthless in that they didn't want to have a 37-year-old guy, still being at the club. They could possibly have had him stay on to be a bit of a squad player and then move on into coaching, but maybe they felt that it was best that he continue his playing career somewhere else, and I know that he'll do a good job with Sean Dyche. But Matty Cash, who, of course, starred for Poland in the World Cup, ended up coming on leaps and bounds. And a really inspired purchase he made was that of Alex Moreno to occupy the left-back position, where Lucas Digne, formerly of Everton, was not really at his best. And there was a bit of a scare, mind you, when Moreno went off injured against Liverpool, having done his hamstring, I think. So they were reportedly in the market for a left-back. And in fact, it's mentioned there in the list of rumoured transfers that in addition to João Felix, of all people, and Federico Chiesa, Aymeric Laporte, who, of course, is fresh from a treble with Manchester City, could be a possible entry in to provide some competition and a little bit of relief. And that means that they could sell Luca Digne and have Moreno and Laporte as their left backs. I was hoping that they'd probably make a bid for Kieran Tierney, but it does look like he'll end up going to Newcastle. Maybe more of that later. But with the 4-4-2 formation he was playing, it was sort of a diamond-like formation with the likes of Johnny McGinn and Emi Buendia and Douglas Luiz and others really doing their bit. And service up front to Watkins and company was just really top quality. But in addition, Martinez was able to evolve as a goalkeeper who could start to play more from the back. And he still has to learn to improve on his release of the ball, because he was booked several times last year for time wasting. But he has evolved into becoming more of a ball playing goalkeeper who can start attacks quite well, either through Mings or through Moreno down the left, and then go straight into the diamond midfield, and then up sort of go up front. I think in the preseason series in America, they did show a few defensive wobbles, but then preseason games are normally just glorified scrimmages where the players are coming back to full fitness. So they're sort of getting their bearings in, getting back to fitness. And I think with the signings he's made, Tielemans, Diaby, Villarreal, obviously he knew Torres from Villarreal. Diaby is quality. Tielemans is interesting because a lot of people criticize Tielemans for being a bit of a lazy bloke at times who doesn't really put in too much effort. But I think Emery sees himself as being the type of person who could get the best out of him. I'm a bit surprised that Felipe Coutinho has not been sold yet. And I am expecting Leon Bailey also to join Young, Nakamba, and Sinisalo and Steer out of the club. But maybe those things will be finalized just in time before the season starts, or maybe that'll all be done in September when the transfer window opens. I'm not too sure. So Emery got them playing a much more disciplined style of football, and they were playing really well. I suppose my criticism of them is that Emery has a bad habit at times of getting a little bit too defensive the later the game goes on. And when you allow yourself to get too defensive, especially against teams above you, you are asking for trouble, and you can be prone to some late goals. And they did finish seventh to earn a spot in the Conference League. But had they not conceded a few of those late goals later on in the season, they could potentially have ended up in the Europa League, which would have been magnificent in itself, considering that, as Mr. Harrison said, they were under threat of being relegated. But having said that, I take a look at it and see that Aston Villa have a much better chance of winning the Conference League than they probably would winning the Europa League. Although, in a certain Mr. Emery, they do have a Europa League merchant who's won it more than a few times. So if he can start to be a little bit more aggressive and really start to make sure that his players really do the business within the first hour or 75 minutes and start, really building a lead, then he can possibly sit back and defend. But one thing which we can remember in football is that you cannot sit back and defend when you don't have a big enough lead. And obviously the discipline sort of speaks for itself. 80 yellow cards. I think he's going to want to crack down on that. There was one red card too. A few offsides. Probably a little bit too many, but these are things which he should be able to work on. And now that he's getting more for his players, he'll be able to mold a team in the style that he wants to see play. And with the 4-4-2 system he's applying working really well, I'm really hopeful that they can do quite well. And I'm going to share Mr. Redknapp's prediction that they will challenge for Europe. In fact, I do believe, I don't think they'll win. They'll be in the Champions League, but they should finish very high in the table. And there's something really good going on in Birmingham.
Right. Well, on that note, let's place them.
There we go. So here is the tier list. And here I go. I can pull them anywhere. They could be champions. They could be relegation.
For me, Europe. For me.
Europe for me too. And I'm actually going to have them sixth. So whoever finishes fifth will have to move. Will have to move to the left of them.
I think Europe as well. I think we're all in agreement with that one. So Aston Villa have gone into the European places, and I believe last season, wasn't it? Didn't we pick that they were going to be struggling to stay up? I'm sure we said that last season in this tier list. I'll have to.
I think we had them
quite low, didn't we?
Bottom end of mid-table, I think.
Yeah. So there we go. So Aston Villa have gone straight into European place. Matt, it's your turn. Who are you going to pick?
I would like to pick this team.
Crystal Palace, and wise old Roy's team, and tell you what, he come in and he did a fantastic job, didn't he? Patrick Vieira, it was a shame how that all ended. I quite like Patrick Vieira, but of course finished 11th. Did look like they were sliding under Vieira towards the relegation zone. Roy managed to get them to 11th. FA Cup third round, EFL Cup third round, and Erebeshi Eze, a man that I always said I would have liked to see us sign, has got the top scorer award for Crystal Palace. So this is the players that they've signed and let go. As you can see, they've let go a lot more players than they've signed. And we know all about the player, Matt, don't we, that they signed?
Yeah. Obviously, we know a lot about Jeff. I mean, these signings are up to date for when these graphics were produced, which was a little bit earlier this week. So I'm not too sure if anybody else has joined the club at Selhurst Park. But that when these graphics were done, this was obviously correct. For me, Roy is a man that knows the job like the back of his hand. Obviously, he's an extremely experienced manager.
Yeah.
Is he going to have Palace challenging for Europe like Villa? No, I can't see it. Are they going to go down? Not with his experience. So, I mean, when you look at these stats from last year, the players that they've let go, the players that they're linked with, for me, no matter what, they are a mid-table finish.
There's something as well concerning, Manny, about Crystal Palace, and that, well, it will concern all Palace fans. There has been quite a lot of talk about Michael Elise.
Yes.
Yes, he's heavily linked to City as well, I believe.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And when you look at the players that City have lost, they've lost
Riyad Mahrez.
Yeah. Now, what a replacement he would be for him.
Yes.
So, money talks. If you're a player as ambitious as he is, obviously he's been in England squad lately. To go along and play with players at that caliber in those competitions is going to be a real attraction, obviously, to the player. It just depends on how much Palace want for him. But obviously, we know the kind of powers City have. So I think if they were to lose him, might be a little bit more of a struggle than the mid-table finish. You might see them start to struggle, but as he's still there at the moment, for me, there'd be a mid-table finish.
Well, we better place them. So let's get.
I could also say that never mind Elise, it's bad enough that they've also lost Wilfried Zaha on a free to Galatasaray.
They have, yeah.
I take the point when people say that Zaha wasn't exactly, banging in the goals either, but he was, of course, Palace's talisman. So he was the type of person you could count on to provide some hope for Palace. So if they lose Zaha and Elise, it's going to be, a bit of a double whammy. And when you take a look at the way Roy shapes his team up, reasonably strong defensively, and Elise and Eze are the ones who pretty much, provide the fulcrum of their attack. So the biggest question is, how do you replace someone like Elise? And I actually think that they will probably struggle this season. And I'm going to share Mr. Harrison's view. They're not going to qualify for Europe, but they should stay up. And what did Mr. Redknapp say about them, by the way? I didn't catch that.
Mid-table.
I think we're all in agreement.
I've got to be honest. I think they're going to be lower mid-table at this moment in time. What do you reckon, Matt?
They're definitely mid-table. Let's talk about placement when we get more into that kind of category. Then we can start placing the teams then, can't we?
I think they could go over of those, really.
I would say mid-table.
Mid-table at this moment.
Here. Mid-table.
Yeah. Let's pop them there. So Crystal Palace have gone into the mid-table position.
So who are
Right.
you choosing then, Craig? Who are you
So
choosing?
my choice is going to be this team. I'm not going to
Ah,
make it easy for myself. Not going to make it easy. Going to go for Brentford. And Brentford, a team that, of course, got the double over Man City last season. A very, very good side. Of course, top scorer is Ivan Toney. More about him in a second. Finished ninth, third round of the FA Cup, third round of the EFL Cup. Thomas Frank, as much as he's not a likable person for Bournemouth fans, he's done a pretty good job and some decent business. These players don't they don't stand out as names. Like Harry did say, he manages to find players from nowhere. And these players, not big names, but at the same time, they have got some real quality. And I think they will be strong. The big thing, though, Ivan Toney is going to be banned for a long, long period of next season.
yeah. Now you see, for me, when I was obviously yourself and me, we've done our own
Yeah.
leagues as well, which obviously we share at the end. But
Yes.
for me, when I was trying to place Brentford, it was one of those kind of like what Manny brought up with Wilfred Zaha. They're losing their talisman for half the season, aren't they? I think he's banned
Yeah.
till January, isn't it? Now,
Something like that.
even though they did what they did last season, they finished
Mhm.
ninth. I mean, fantastic last season. You can't take anything from them. But I think losing Tony's goals, I know they have signed a striker,
Yeah.
but if you don't replace those goals early doors, will they be in trouble? I think for me, they're going to be mid-table, but I think they're going to be lower end mid-table,
Mhm.
purely because I think they are going to miss Tony that much. They're not a one-man band by nowhere means the least. I know their goalkeeper. They've got a situation with the goalkeeper as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Which obviously needs resolving. They've obviously signed a goalkeeper, who I'm assuming is number one quality, with the anticipation of losing their number one. So
Mhm.
I think it's going to be a bit of a topsy turvy season for Brentford.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, yeah, I still think at the end of it they'll have enough. They're not even without Ivan Toney. I don't think they're the weakest squad in the league. But I
No.
could be completely wrong.
What do you make of Brentford, Manny?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you've got players like Brian and Buemo in the team and also the core of the midfield, which serve them quite well, I think you're going to do just fine. I mean, people obviously take a look at Tony's goals, but almost easily forget about the supporting cast, which have done a pretty good job with and without him. And Buemo is certainly that type of person. And they are planning, of course, on bringing in. I see this chap named Trezor. I'm assuming that he has been playing in the championship. I'm not too sure, but
Mhm.
he could this could very well be another player that Frank, scouts very well and brings into the team and sees him, just slot in there like a hand into a glove. And most of the outgoings they've got over here have been guys, I think, with the possible exception of Janssen, who did his bit. Most of these guys, I mean, we hardly ever saw them play. And of
Yeah.
course, Matt also mentioned Mark Flecken coming in. I believe Flecken is a Dutch international. He's not first choice for the Oranje, but he definitely is there or thereabouts. And then Nathan Collins has come in from Wolves, Kevin Schade, along with Flecken from Freiburg. So Frank obviously using his German connections there to work some kind of magic. And they're obviously a team as well who perform well as a team. And even if they were to lose David Raya, who is, of course, rumoured to be joining the Arsenal, with Matt Turner also being sent away to make way for that. I mean, if it has to happen, it should happen preferably before the start of the season, because I don't want to see a situation where, in September, things have to wait till then, and we just everything sort of takes its course. But I think Brentford they'll definitely stay up. I will probably have to agree with you boys when you say that they're not going to reach the heights of finishing in the top half of the table yet again. And I definitely don't see them challenging for Europe, because in as much as they can, pull off some magnificent results against really big teams, they still do tend to struggle against teams they should be beating. And that ends up more often than not being their Achilles heel. And the discipline also definitely doesn't work in their favor. 116 yellow cards, 138 offsides, 388 fouls, and 4 red cards. It's fair to say that Brentford are a bit of a niggly team to play against. I'm not going to say nasty because that's too harsh, but they are very niggly. But there is also going to be a problem if other teams will be able to sort of find them out. They can play some very good football, but they do have the ability to be a bit niggly. They remind me a little bit of the Stoke City team that were in the Premiership for a few seasons and were giving other teams well above them a run for their money. But I just don't see them finishing in the top half of the table this time either. But they will certainly continue to remind people that they're capable of producing some good results. So even if they were to finish mid-table, they certainly wouldn't be in very, very big danger of getting relegated. In fact, I'd say they'd be they'd be mid-table, if that makes any sense.
I think the discipline there is over a longer period of time than the Aston Villa one there. But Harry said mid-table, and I've got to agree with him. I've got to agree with you, Manny. I think they're going to be mid-table. What do you reckon, Matt?
Yeah, totally. But I think
higher or lower than Palace.
I think Palace may finish possibly higher.
Possibly higher. What do you reckon, Manny?
I'm actually going to go for Brentford to finish above Crystal Palace. But since I said mid-table, I'm going to go for them to finish just outside the top half, 11th.
11th. That means I've got the defining vote on this. Because Matt said Palace was going to finish higher. Manny said Brentford are going to finish higher. I know what I picked. Of course, when I did this, my personal one, and I did say Palace to finish higher than Brentford. But,
good call.
Of course, that could all change because of the Michael Elise situation at Palace. So there we go. That is team number 3 in there. Of course, we can rejig this around at the end. We've got to agree on something at the end with regards to this table. But Manny, it's back to you. Who are you going with?
Well, it's certainly not going to be the team I normally go for, but it is a huge curveball. I am going to pick the team with the cockerel standing on top of the old age football.
Oh,
our biggest rivals, because some of my mates and I were having a bit of a discussion about the club, considering the huge seismic change that took place, namely Ange Postecoglou. Well, I mean, aren't you going to put up the slide? Yeah,
there
perfect.
We are.
Now, we were talking about this seismic change, namely Ange Postecoglou leaving Celtic to come all the way down to Spurs. And I remember saying that it was a huge mistake because he's leaving a club that will be playing in the Champions League group stages, which have just won a domestic treble, to go down to England and manage a club which literally had an awful season last season, as you can see, finishing 8th outside the European places, not even a Conference League, 5th round of the FA Cup, 3rd round of the League Cup. And they did qualify for the last 16 stage of the Champions League, but sort of, they huffed and puffed to get all the way there, it must be said, under Antonio Conte. And then, the whole thing happened. Why he would want to go there, I wouldn't know. But my friend who was supporting Celtic told me that, you can't say no to an opportunity to manage in the Premier League. And for the type of money that Ange was being offered, he just couldn't say no. Now, he's not necessarily living hand to mouth by any means. He was getting paid some decent money at Celtic. And what really angered me and my friend was that, having spoken evangelically at certain points last season of wanting to stay at Celtic and not move, to suddenly take the decision to move to Tottenham was a little bit of a kick in the teeth to some of the Celtic fans who took him to their hearts, really. But, he came down, and Spurs have got a manager with a really good CV. He's obviously managed his country, Australia, at a World Cup. And, with the success he had at Celtic and elsewhere, he's come into a club which might need someone like him to do very well. And we take a look at the players who have come in. Maddison from Leicester City is absolute quality. Porro, and I think Kulusevski was signed. He might hit that was concluded. He did, of course, join them on loan last season, but I think that has been now confirmed. And Guglielmo from Empoli and Solomon from Shakhtar Donetsk on a free. So they've made some decent signings, and obviously, two outgoings have been confirmed. Harry Winks, of course, has gone to Leicester City, so sort of going the other way to Maddison. And Lucas Moura has been let go on a free. They're planning on bringing in Van der Ven, Ashley Phillips, but there are some more outgoings to be considered. What was also not mentioned was that they signed an Italian goalkeeper, Vicario. That's the one, Guglielmo Vicario from Empoli. I think you forgot to mention his surname there, but that's who they signed. He should be the replacement for Hugo Lloris, who is expected to leave the club very soon, because I think he's coming to the end, and he's had a long stint as it is. So it should be Vicario and Forster to compete for the goalkeeping slot. And I think Ange's focus is probably going to be to try to rebuild the team, get rid of this ridiculous 3-4-3 formation, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I mean, when they tried a back four against Newcastle at St. James's Park, we all know how that went. That went completely horribly wrong. But he needs to sort of stamp his mark immediately and make sure the players understand him well. And the tough Aussie that he is, he will definitely be, as they would say, fair dinkum. He will be strict, but he will be straight. He'll be honest. He'll be upfront, and the players should be able to respect him, and he will earn their respect. And interestingly enough, their discipline seems to be, I mean, if you take away the 3 red cards, only 75 yellows, it's not too bad. Offsides maybe could be improved a little bit, but still quite decent. A shooting accuracy of 38% doesn't really work that well when you got Harry Kane and Heung-min Son in your team. And the Harry Kane situation is also going to have to be resolved ASAP. You either sell him and recoup the money, or you keep him and make sure you keep your promises with him. And that's going to be also something really big. I mean, we talked about Palace losing Zaha and potentially Elise, and Brentford losing Tony. If Spurs lose Harry Kane, it could either be a huge bombshell for them, because I don't know what it will mean for the future of Heung-min Son, or it could perhaps be an opportunity to rebuild a new team outside the identity of the England captain. Whatever happens, Postecoglou does have a job on his hands, but he's relishing the challenge. I mean, you take a look at Harry Kane's tally last season, 32 goals. That is nothing to be sniffed at. So if you lose him, that's a big problem. Harry, of course, having managed them before, does predict that they will challenge for Europe. I see them potentially getting 7th and getting into the Conference League, but no higher than that. I think it's going to take a long time, a little bit like... it's a bit like when Ten Hag came to Manchester United knowing that he had a rebuilding job on his hands, and he ended his first season with a trophy and a 3rd-place finish. I think the crises that have been going on at Spurs, if they can just get back into Europe, even if it's by the back door, that should be enough for them, and at least they can build on that. And maybe win a domestic cup or two. We'll have to see how that works. I don't know if Ivan Perisic will be staying at the club. I think Perisic is really, really good. Very underrated by me, but a lot of Spurs fans don't seem to like him. He will have to fix the defence and the midfield, but I think he should get Spurs clicking again. And they're not, as I said, they're not going to challenge for the big prizes. But if they can get into the Conference League, I think that should be, they'll take that. And of course, maybe a good cup run, potentially winning something, a trophy. You never know.
Well, this is, to be honest, Manny, you have provided a curveball here, because I had them in a very different place to what a lot of people would think. So, Matt, start off. Where do you think Spurs are going to be?
Well, with the Harry Kane situation, like Manny's highlighted, 32 goals in all competition is nothing to be, it's for me. Ange coming in, I'm sure he's a very good manager. I kind of agree with Manny. If I was him, I probably would have stayed at Celtic, to be fair, because you're in the Champions League. But obviously, the pool to manage in the Premier League is obviously massive, and to manage a club of the size of Tottenham is obviously a big pool. I don't think really, with what they've signed, and the potential of losing Kane is actually going to improve them on last season. I think they're going to finish in the same position as what they finished last year. I think 8th. I think there's 3 stronger teams that will get the Europa League and the Conference, and they're definitely not breaking into the Champions League. I mean, if they lose Harry Kane, I think it's going to be quite a tricky season for them. So I'm going to go mid-table.
Manny, where are you putting them?
For me, they should finish 7th. I do fancy them. I think they'll improve, but it is going to be a toughie, a big toughie.
Well, I had them in this category. So they could switch between, you think 7th, Manny, you think they might get into there, but I would say at this moment in time, how I feel about them, I reckon they're going to be in the mid-table positions, probably quite high in that category. Not going to be low, but are we happy with that?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, let's not forget it's 2 against 1. You're effectively the tiebreaker, or maybe Mr. Harrison is. So I'm happy with your verdicts. Don't worry about it. All good.
Fair enough. We can always rejig this at the end.
If it's anything like last year, Manny, we'll be swapping and all sorts in a minute. So,
Matt, where are you going now?
Is it my turn?
It is your turn.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, I've had a little thought, and I think it might be a good idea to discuss someone that has come up from the Championship last year. And I think it's going to be an interesting one. And that is Burnley. Totally different side to what we saw last time in the Premier League. As we saw in the Cup last year. Not that we were very good that day, but I thought they played some good football. I watched them several times on the telly during last season, and I thought that the football was fantastic. They've obviously got a good coach in Vincent Kompany, who obviously has worked under some very, very good managers over the years, as we all know. And it's quite interesting because I was listening to Talksport this week, and the pundits that were on this particular show, not one of them put Burnley in the bottom 3. And personally, for me, I think they're going to stay up. They'll be in the battle, they'll be in the mix. Don't get me wrong, but I think they may have enough, and if they play the same attractive football as they played last year, I think they'll grind out some results. They've made some brave signings, and they've also made some decent signings. Dara O'Shea from West Brom, good solid player. They made a brave signing in James Trafford, paying 19 million for him. Nobody heard of him before that tournament, I don't think. And they've signed experience in Nathan Redmond. So I think they've made some interesting signings. But But yeah, going on the basis of what I saw last season, I think they're going to be okay.
Well, shall we have a look at this and pick where they're going to go? Manny, what do you think is going to happen with Burnley?
It's an interesting one, Craig, because obviously the only time I saw Burnley play was when Company came back to the Etihad Stadium to receive that amazing welcome from the fans and his former manager, only to see his guests very rudely treated in the form of a 6-0 thrashing in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'd like to think that since then, Company has done a little bit of homework and sort of seen what he needs to do with the team. Because interestingly enough, you take a look at the incomings, the outgoings are also quite interesting. He's gotten rid of some experience in the form of Ashley Barnes and Matt Loughton. He's also sent the Northern Irish goalkeeper Bailey Peacock Farrell out on loan to bring the England under 17 or under 21
Yeah.
hero Trafford in. And obviously they see a lot of potential in Trafford, but of course we have to remember that success for England in a youth tournament will not necessarily translate into professional success. Freddie Woodman is a perfect example of that. I pity the poor fella. I think he should be playing at a really high level, but it is what it is. But obviously Company has made some serious decisions with regard to the squad, and when you take a look at his time at Anderlecht and the way he coached, he obviously will have his teams, fairly well drilled. And it will be interesting as well to see. Obviously, when Sean Dyche goes to Turf Moor to play against them, he will definitely do his homework against them, but it will be a much different team to the team he coached for so many years. And I see Company as being a little bit of a fresher version of Sean Dyche in that he will have his team battling, but also playing some fairly decent football. And will he be able to sort of see the team play that type of football week in, week out against some teams higher than them? It will remain to be seen. But they could have enough about them to finish in the league. And I'm in agreement with Mr. Harrison. I think I have them finishing 17th. And the reason why I say 17th is because they are going to be in that relegation mix, but somehow they will find a way.
I'm in agreement with the pair of you that they're going into that category. Maybe not in that position, but we can always discuss that. Let's stick them there for the time being. But I think they'll be safe. Matt, you think they're going to be safe? Manny, you think they're going to be safe?
Yep.
There we go. There we are. So that is Burnley. So where am I going to go next? Well, I'm going to pick somebody quite interesting. And a team that actually did pretty well in a European competition last season. Wasn't much in the Premier League. And that is West Ham United. Wow. 14th. They were in a battle to stay in the Premier League at one point. They beat us quite convincingly, didn't they, Matt, at Dean Court, when they come down? Seemed to be the impetus to kickstart their season. They finished the FA Cup 5th, the quarterfinals in the EFL Cup, but of course the UEFA Conference League winners, which means they'll be going into the Europa League. There's no signings, though, at the moment, and they've kind of lost a very, very big player. And also, you can't... Lanzini leaving as well can't be sniffed at. So there is a lot of things that David Moyes should be concerned about. Not a bad discipline side. 0 red cards, 44 yellow cards. Of course, started off the season terribly. But yeah, that is West Ham. Harry thinks, and is Harry being biased here? Top half. I think he might
he
be.
is.
Yeah, I think he
Yes,
might
he
be.
is.
I don't know. I slightly disagree. I agree with Harry.
Oh,
And
well, here we go.
And I'll tell you for why.
Go on.
I know they've lost Declan Rice. Obviously, massive player to lose.
Yes.
But I just got this feeling with the success on the back end of that last season that they're not going to, don't get me wrong, they're not going to go and do what Newcastle did last season. Obviously not. But I do think that they're good enough for a top half finish. So I'm talking 10th.
They're one of these which could, I think they're in that category, that mid-table category, which Matt, you agree with. And Manny, what do you think?
I'll have to disagree with both Mr. Redknapp and Mr. Harrison, because you take a look at the transfer business they've done. How can you possibly think of preparing for a season when you're going to be in the Europa League and the Premiership and the other competitions, and not even think of using the money you earn from the Declan Rice transfer to buy any players?
Yeah.
And I've been chatting with quite a few West Ham United fans, and many of them have told me that if David Moyes had done the right thing and walked away from the job as a champion, he would have sealed his legacy as one of West Ham's maybe not greatest managers per se, but at least he would have sealed his place in their history, and rightly so. Because to have a dreadful season in the Premiership and somehow get it together in Europe to win against all odds, it may be the stuff of dreams for some other clubs. But West Ham also are a club that prides themselves on playing some really attractive football as well. And over the years, you take a look at the club that has produced the likes of Bobby Moore, Martin Peters, several other players who were the fulcrum of that World Cup winning side in 1966. And as happy as the West Ham fans might be with the trophy, they're not really happy with the style of football. So when you have people like Allardyce and Moyes coming in, and you see the type of football being played, which doesn't get you the results you necessarily want, people aren't going to be too happy with that. And I don't know if it's necessarily David Moyes' fault that there are no transfers, but there has to, alone at least. But you've got to have some sort of purpose in you there. And what are they going to do in the Europa League? Are they just going to, play a few games, try and put all their eggs in the Premiership basket and try and finish a little bit higher, improve on their position? Or what are they going to do? Are they serious about this upcoming season? I have them finishing mid-table and comfortably so, which means they won't be challenging for Europe and they will end up, finishing in that middle position. They should improve on their 14th position, though. But unless they start making some signings and showing that they are serious about, evolving the team, I definitely cannot see them improving from their position. And David Moyes is putting himself at risk here because, does he want to be remembered as a European champion, or does he want to be remembered as a team that specializes in mid-table mediocrity? He's going to have to do a lot of work here.
Yeah, I've got to say, it's a very good point Manny's made there.
Yeah.
And also, just to touch on slightly different, obviously everyone goes Declan Rice, massive. For me, last season, what West Ham needed was a striker. Now, they had Antonio. Obviously, he's injury prone. He's not getting any younger, let's be fair. And then they signed Danny Ings, who, for me, wasn't the answer to their problem. So the one worrying thing for me for West Ham is in the goal scoring department as well.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stick with what I thought. But I reckon let's leave them there for now, Craig, and we'll start moving people about in a bit.
Yeah. Because I do think,
they're in the right. They're definitely in the right bit, I think.
Yeah, I think they're in the right category, and I think we all agree with that. See, we're not disagreeing too much here, are we? But
no, we're not.
We will do it in a minute. We will do it in a minute. Whose turns it next? It's Mr. Manny's, isn't it?
It is Manny's.
Who are we going, Manny?
Oh yeah, you picked West Ham, Craig. I completely forgot about that. So, I think I'm going to go with a team that obviously made a lot of headlines last season for good reasons, of course, and who could be the type of team that, a lot of people would expect to do well, and we're going to have to see what happens. Bring on the Seagulls. from Brighton.
Oh, Brighton.
That's an interesting one. Manny's thrown up another curveball here. So Brighton, go on. Do you want to say your piece about Brighton? Because I thought impressive.
Yeah, impressive last season. Although they were beaten by Aston Villa 3-0 at Villa Park, and I had hoped that Villa would overtake them to finish in the Europa League placings, Brighton ended up pulling off the result they needed against a Manchester City team that looked absolutely dire, it must be said, and they secured their Europa League placing. And obviously, De Zerbi deserved all the praise he could get for picking up where Graham Potter left off and actually, making the team even better. And, FA Cup semi-finals, what a season they had. And they will obviously be in the Europa League this season, along with West Ham and Liverpool. And of course, speaking of Liverpool, they've signed the former Liverpool vice-captain and former England international James Milner as one of their big signings, along with João Pedro from Watford, Verbruggen from Anderlecht, a signing from Fiorentina, and Dahoud from Dortmund. Some decent signings there. And Milner, I know a lot of people will say that his better days are behind him, and he is, of course, well into the wrong side of his 30s, touching 40. He can provide some experience, and obviously, if I don't know if Lallana is still there, but I'm sure if he is, he will enjoy playing with Milner once again. But of course, going the other way is a certain World Cup winner by the name of Alexis McAllister, who was also their top scorer. And I suppose, in some ways, it's not too bad to lose him, because when you take a look at the 12 goals that he scored, Brighton have always had this knack of being able to find goals from almost anywhere in the team. It could be Pascal Gross, it could have been Leandro Trossard, who of course left Brighton to come to my lot. And of course, a certain ex-gunner by the name of Danny Welbeck, who also hasn't lost his touch in front of goal. And apart from McAllister, though, they haven't really given away too many people who would be considered important players. Sarmiento could perhaps have played a role, maybe. And they've sent out Sherpen to Graz on loan. So I think De Zerbi is brought okay. I'll be interested to see what sort of a role Milner plays. I don't necessarily see him being first choice, although he might start games at the beginning of the season, then possibly, just be slightly phased out to become more of a substitute, or he could end up, playing in a position where, his lack of pace won't be too much of a detriment. I do seem to remember him being used as a defender by Jurgen Klopp in his final season. And a very well-disciplined team, 59 yellow cards, no dismissals. And they're certainly a type of team that does play some very efficient, very attractive football. And they are planning on bringing in the likes of McTominay and Palmer, who, of course, Palmer is the Manchester City youngster, and McTominay has done some decent bits at Manchester United and is still doing the business for Scotland. But those two transfers could be potentially quite helpful for them. I'm a bit surprised that Harry has predicted that they would end up finishing mid-table. But he does have a bit of a point there. And the reason why is because there will possibly be a bit of a climb down now, because in addition to the players that have just, gone out and the ones that have come in, I think there are some players who did quite well in the past two seasons who might possibly start to, tire a little bit. There is always the question of the law of diminishing returns, and especially when you consider how other teams will have strengthened this particular season. In preparation for this season, it'll be very hard for me to see Brighton doing too well in the Premiership. And bear in mind, they've also got European football on which to concentrate. They could either potentially, reach the last 32, or even last 16 of the Europa League. But maybe those exertions could take their toll. And there is, of course, some talk as well that Chelsea have signed Roberto Sanchez, who, of course, had been phased out of the first team by Luke Steele. But I still was a bit surprised with that, because you take away Sanchez, who, of course, had done well under Graham Potter when he phased out Matt Ryan, and then of course ended up being phased out a little bit by Luke Steele when he ended up coming in for the last few games of the season. But then of course Sanchez was the goalkeeper who played in the FA Cup semi-final. I wasn't expecting him to leave. So how do you replace someone like a Sanchez? It will remain to be seen, and I'm not too sure how. I mean, don't get me wrong, Steele is a really, really talented keeper, but I don't know if he has that much in terms of experience. So Brighton might struggle, and they should also end up finishing mid-table. I think they might end up. They should have a top half finish, though. I'm going for them to finish ninth.
For ninth. Right. Well, let's get up this tier list and let's have a look at where we're going to put them. So, Manny reckons ninth, which would put them in this category here.
Yes.
But what do you reckon, Matt?
I totally agree with Manny. Because when you actually see my predictions, my own personal ones, Brighton are ninth. And the reason why they are ninth is because this is going to be a really good test for Brighton this season. They had a fantastic year last year, but with the European football being chucked in, the Thursday-Sunday rotation, I just think that they might not have the depth in squad to have such a successful Premier League season as they had last year. Obviously, there's no way they'll go down. I don't think at all. But I think getting used to that Thursday, Sunday, and is the depth of the squad there? They've signed the experience in Milner, which is, for experience is going to be absolutely second to none.
Yeah.
Guy who's won pretty much everything in the game. But is Pedro that they've signed from Watford, is he going to compensate the goals that they're losing in McAllister? So it's going to be a good test for Brighton. And I totally agree with Manny ninth. Totally.
Well, I have actually predicted them to finish eighth, but I've been outnumbered. And to be honest, it is only one place. So there they are, sat there in ninth at the moment. Of course, we can rejig it as we see fit once after. Right, Matt, it's your turn next.
Yeah.
As Will Smith would say, we're going to get rejiggy with it.
Get rejiggy. Love that. Love that.
It's time, I think, that we've had one of the big boys, but who wasn't such a big boy last year?
And who is that? Chelsea.
I think it's going to be interesting. Now, I agree with Harry. I think they are going to be a Euro challenger.
Yeah.
Not Champions League. I think they may fall short of that. I think Pochettino will need, a good season to bed the players. Obviously, there's a lot of outgoings, but obviously he needs to put his stamp on it. But I think there's enough there for Europa League or Europa Conference League. There's no way they can have a season like they had last year, surely. I think there's still more work for them to do in the transfer window.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think their season last year was born out of why Thomas Tuchel was pushed out. I don't know. When Graham Potter come in, I thought it was a sensible decision, but he needed more time. But he was never going to get that time at Chelsea. So that's why they ended in the situation they did. And let's be honest, the Frank Lampard experiment was a complete disaster.
Yeah, I mean, for a Chelsea side to only have 11 wins in a season, obviously tells you the whole story, doesn't it? I think, I think the ownership have got a lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
I think they've gone in there and kind of treated it like a Monopoly game, and got a lot of things wrong. Not Tuchel's fault, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily Graham Potter's fault. I didn't think Potter would last long in the job at all, so Potter going did not surprise me. But now they've got a manager of this quality. He needs to now be left to put his stamp on this squad. So for me, he needs the season easily. So if things don't go to plan and they don't qualify for Europe, but they finish in the top half, he needs another good summer to really, really stamp his authority on it. But I think they're going to be all right. I personally think that that Poch is good enough to get them at least a European place.
Well, let's have a look and put them on this tier list. Manny, what do you think Chelsea will do this season?
I have them finishing in the European positions. I have them finishing
Okay.
fifth. And the reason why is because obviously, it is, of course, true that once you hit rock bottom, I mean, I know 12th isn't rock bottom, but it's certainly, for a club like Chelsea, it's not where they want it to be. The only way you can look to go is up. And Poch, of course, worked miracles at Spurs, it has to be said. And the type of manager that he is, he will almost certainly look to try and bring some of that magic into a Chelsea team that literally has had its confidence shaken to its soul.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of outgoings which have helped fund their transfers, but some of the players they brought in are absolute quality. And Cuckoo, for instance, should have been in the French World Cup squad, but sadly got injured. I saw him play for Leipzig in the Champions League. Absolute quality. He will literally, tear up the fields in the Premiership. And he could also be the type of manager to get the best out of the Ukrainian Mikhailo Mudryk, who we were interested in, let's not forget. But then Chelsea, of course, hijacked that deal. And in as much as a lot of my friends from my fellow Arsenal fans were sort of guffawing about how, we've dodged a 100 million quid bullet, basically saved about 70 million bob by getting Trossard instead of Mudryk. Mudryk is still young. He moves beautifully. He just can't shoot for toffee. But maybe Pochettino will find a way to get the best out of him. So Chelsea really can only afford to go up. And if they finish in a mid-table position, then obviously, Pochettino will, for the players he's brought in and for the outgoings he's done and for the work he's tried to do, it's not going to be, he's not going to get too much in terms of time. So I have them finishing fifth. They won't make the Champions League. No, I'm sorry, that's out of the question. But they should be able to, they should end up in Europe.
Right. So, Manny, you think they're going to end up in Europe? Do you think Chelsea will miss out on Europe, Matt, or do you think they'll make it?
No, I totally agree with Manny. Fifth place.
Fifth place. I have been outnumbered again, but I did say that they're going to make Europe. So let's swap them over. There they are. Chelsea have gone into fifth place. So my next team are going to be a team that had a very, very good season, but a lot of doubts over them. And that is going to be Margot Robbie's team. I like saying Margot Robbie. Fulham. Here they are. So
Interested in this one.
this is a huge curveball because there's still a lot of question marks over this football club.
Well, no, most noticeably with the gaffer. Obviously, he's turned down Saudi, but you never know what will happen in football management.
Yeah.
Has Mitrovic gone yet?
I think he's on the verge of it.
Even though they've replaced him already, I don't think he's the answer. I think Mitrovic is going to be a very, very hard player for them to replace. So, last season, for them to finish where they finished after coming straight up from the Championship was, credit to the job that Marco Silva's done there.
That said, what you said there about Raul Jimenez? I would have bought him here. He's a player I would have bought here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, quite possibly. But obviously, with him being at Fulham, I don't think he's the answer to the Mitrovic situation. Obviously, there's still business in the transfer window.
Yeah.
The link to players like Fred and Callum Hudson-Odoi and Damari Gray. So they're linked to quite a few names. But I think this season's going to be a bit of a struggle for him.
And so does Harry. And let's get this out, because personally, I completely agree with both of you. I think, well, Manny, what do you think Fulham's going to do?
Yeah, taking a look at the outgoings, I mean, most of the players who have been released have been players who weren't exactly seeing much in terms of game time last season. I think losing Tim Ream to injury near the end didn't really help them, because they were looking really good to qualify for Europe, only to just fade away near the end of that season and finish. I mean, a top half finish is certainly not small potatoes by any means, but they're obviously the type of team who will, at this particular rate, struggle to try and recreate the glory of previous seasons. I don't see them going too far forward necessarily, and maybe some of the players who excelled last season will struggle to, recreate those highs.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have them finishing in mid-table, but I'm going to sort of stick my neck out here and say that they will end up finishing 15th, because I do like Marco Silva and the job he's done. I know that things didn't work out for him for Watford and Everton, but I suppose, third time's a charm. He enjoys his time in West London. And I think he seems to have the respect of the players, and they will certainly play for him. I just don't see them, really putting up too much of a fight against some really big opposition. But they should do enough to finish 15th, in my opinion. I think they will stay up. It won't. I know it's technically in the category of just staying up, but they should comfortably finish 15th. It will be difficult. They'll either get into a relegation struggle, or they will be in mid-table and have a bit of a slump, but just finish 15th.
I love Manny's thinking, because he's got them placed exactly where I've got them placed. So what Manny's just said, I totally agree with. So that's where we're placed.
A coincidence. Thank you very much indeed, Matt.
I think they're going to also be in that category, but I do think it's going to be a bit more of a battle for them than it was last season. Now, are they going to finish above Burnley or not? You guys,
Just
above Burnley. Come on, above Burnley.
Right, let's put them there then. Let's put them there.
Well, actually, yeah. I don't think Burnley. Anyway, I'll argue that toss when we got everybody on here. So anyway, let's go.
Right, Manny, your turn.
Is it? Wait, hold on a minute.
I picked Fulham. I picked Fulham. You did, didn't you?
No.
Who did I? I started with Aston Villa. I picked. We have 9 teams. I picked Aston Villa, Spurs, and Brighton. I do believe it is my turn.
I've picked Crystal Palace and Burnley. That's all I've picked.
I think we've made a mistake. I think I jumped
like you were doing last year.
I think I jumped the gun, haven't I?
You did, yes. You
right.
Did.
Go on, Matt. You take your turn.
Right. Okay, I will take my turn. Thank you very much.
That's all right. You're more than welcome.
So I'm going to go with Mr. House'side.
Right.
Ooh, wow.
Right. For me, I think they've made some good signings. Very good signings. But I think Champions League, there is a lot of demand there with the Champions League. There'd be a Euro challenger, but they won't be top 4 next season. For me, they won't be top 4, and I'll tell you why.
Go on.
Right, they're not going to have a bad season in the Premier League at all. I think personally, they are going to finish in the Europa League places. and that is just purely on the whole demand of the Champions League. And I think from a Geordie perspective, if you do well in the Champions League, and they finish sixth next season, and maybe have a good cup run again like they did last year, I think they'd be quite happy with it. There's just something there with just there, the Callum Wilson, if he gets injured, then you have got Isaac, great player.
Yeah.
But I think they're just a little bit light in certain places. Now, Harvey Barnes, great signing, real good addition to the squad. But just for me, I mean, Callum Wilson, tail end of last season, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Had to be in that England squad, the last squad that Gareth Southgate picked. Otherwise, it would have been absolutely criminal. But for me, Eddie will continue to build on what he's done this past season.
Fair enough. Manny, let's look at those stats. I nearly predicted this last season, and I said that they were going to finish third to Harry Redknapp. They finished fourth, so I got it just slightly wrong. But, what a phenomenal season that was for them. And I do get where you're coming from, Matt, but I think they're going to be very successful in the Champions League, in fact. I even said this to, I did say this to Kendall Rowan. I said, I think you're going to be very, very successful in the Champions League.
I mean, you might remember, and I know Manny would probably remember those Champions League matches at St James's Park under the lights back in the late 90s. Faustino Asprilla scored a hat trick against Barcelona, and kind of like Anfield, there's a magic there at St James's Park during the Champions League. So I agree with you, Craig. They're probably going to have a really good, a good campaign in the Champions League. Definitely.
Those were the days, my friends. They thought they'd never end. But I'll tell you something, though. I mean, obviously, there is a big point that when you have that sort of a miraculous finish, there will be a come down. And let's also not forget that just like Arsenal, Newcastle also benefited from several big teams having pretty poor seasons. Liverpool, for example, flattered to deceive quite horribly with a pretty poor away record in the Premiership. Ironically, they did beat Newcastle at St James's Park, but that really was an away win that was few and far between. And Newcastle, I think it was you, Matt, who said that they look a little bit light. You are quite spot on. And when you take a look at those incomings, I mean, Tonali is an absolutely quality midfielder. Harvey Barnes down the left. I was expecting Aston Villa to make a move for him. Of course, if we didn't have a certain Gabriel Martinelli, I'd say buy him. I mean, get him to Arsenal. Absolute quality. Can skin. I mean, I remember watching Leicester play Aston Villa. He literally skinned Ashley Young for pace and then scored that fine goal past Emi Martinez. And that's an idea of the type of quality he gets. And, the outgoings, of course, Longstaff and Clark weren't exactly first teamers. And there is still a decent core in the squad. I think Newcastle was supposed to be in the market for Kieran Tierney as a sort of an upgrade on Dan Burn. And the back four that they fielded, obviously Kieran Trippier is absolute quality at right back, and Botman and Shah did a really good job. But Burn could potentially be a weak link because he's not exactly the benchmark of what a left back should be. Tall fella who probably doesn't overlap too much. Someone like Tierney, who is built for the big stage, would come into Newcastle and slot in there perfectly. But if they don't get that transfer through, then it's going to be very difficult for Newcastle to sort of do as well as they can with that workman-like defence. It's very interesting that Mr. Harrison mentions the Newcastle Champions League days then. You take a look at the players then, you take a look at the players that Newcastle have now. As good as Callum Wilson and Isak are, they are no Les Ferdinand or David Ginola. And of course, let's not forget a certain Peter Beardsley was brought back to Newcastle to try to start the whole thing. I don't remember if he played in the Champions League games. I think he did, because he was also in contention for the Euro 96 squad for England and sadly missed out on what would have been a dream final tournament. But the players that Newcastle had then, would, with all due respect to this lot at Newcastle, run rings around this lot. I mean, maybe Nick Pope is a slight upgrade on Pavel Srnicek and Shaka Hislop in goal. But apart from that, I'm not too sure that there is too much in terms of absolute world-class quality that would really make you go, whoa, that is a team to fear. And of course, I might be biased given that there is another former gunner in Joe Willock in that team. But I don't really share the prediction that they will necessarily do too well unless they get a few more players with that big match European Champions League experience. And of course, Cherny has already played in the major tournament for Scotland and is still a key part of Steve Clarke's plans for this upcoming European campaign. So Newcastle might need to buy some more in terms of quality. They may also need to, really work to get a few more people on the outgoing list. They should challenge and they should have a decent season. I remember thinking that Spurs would end up finishing in 7th, which meant that Newcastle would struggle. But I think I can comfortably say that Newcastle will have a drop down, but they should finish in the European places. Let them have the Conference League.
Oh, that's where I disagree. That's where I disagree.
Do you know what? I'm going to disagree with both of you.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
I was going to say that I might be. You might say that I'm biased because Eddie's there. Eddie and Jason are there, but I honestly think that they will do exactly the same as what they did last season. I don't think they'll. I don't think they'll get 3rd. I'm not going to make that prediction again, but I think they will get 4th.
I disagree, and I also disagree with what Manny says. I think they're better than Conference League, but I don't think they're qualified for the Champions League next year, unless they go out and win it. For me, they finish 6th.
So that means Aston Villa going to the Conference League once again?
Yeah, for me.
Well, that means that Villa are just going to have to go out and win the Conference League this season.
Well, do you know what, Manny? I'm actually thinking of putting a bet on, and we'll see what happens, but my money's on Villa doing very, very well in that Conference League, and I reckon that they'll get to the final. And I'm going to put a little bet on that they're going to win it. Because, like you said, the gaffer there has got great experience in European football. And I've got a funny feeling Villa could challenge that competition.
Hey, if West Ham could win it, so could Aston Villa.
Well, we've gone in the middle, which was Matt's prediction, which was Europa League football for Newcastle. I still think they're going to get Champions League, and look at what I said last season; it come true. So I stand by that. But
debate, Craig, don't go throwing your toys out the pram just yet. There's still time to debate. You ain't done Luton yet. Come on.
Do you know what? This was the biggest part of the debate last season, Manny. Was about Newcastle and my prediction. I nearly got it right. And everybody said, nah, you're talking rubbish. Talking rubbish.
Do you know what, Craig? I put my hands up. I thought you would start raving mad. Harry thought you would start raving mad. But fair play to you. You put your money where your mouth is and you predicted it. And you were right. Okay, not on position, but no one probably would have thought they would have got Champions League. So fair play to you, my friend.
The reason why I made that prediction...
Let that be the legacy of this tier list. Right,
thanks for blowing my trumpet, Matt. But the reason why I picked it was because of when Eddie Howe come into Newcastle that season prior to last season. The actual form that he was only 2nd. Effectively when he come in, and I thought he'll get him into the Champions League again. And.
Well done, Mystic Craig.
There we are. Mystic Craig. Right. Manny, it is your turn, Manny, because I completely stuffed up the... So we'll go back to the original route, which was Manny first, Then Matt, it's your go, and then it's my go because I
Oh,
jumped the gun and I'm a naughty
oh,
boy.
Craig, you gentleman.
There we are. Right, Maddie, where are we going?
We are going to take a trip to the Forest all the way in Nottingham. Two-time
Lovely.
European champions.
Lovely.
And the manager who Matt said might be the first one to get the sack, Stephen Cooper. And we are going to. I actually do see where he's coming from here. And I love the reasoning that Matt used. Last season, of course, they avoided relegation. They, of course, beat my lot at the City Ground, which, was absolutely horrendous performance from my lot. But enough to finish 16th. Semi-finals of the League Cup, which certainly wasn't too bad. And they also had a huge goalkeeping conundrum with Dean Henderson getting injured, Wayne Hennessy coming in and doing decently well, but they decided to bring in the Real Madrid star Keylor Navas and see how he performed. And he didn't do too badly. And if we take a look at the players coming in, we see Elanga coming in from Manchester United, trying to emulate Lingard and Henderson. Of course, Lingard has now gone away. What a disappointment he was, it has to be said. Chris Wood from Newcastle, obviously not very happy to miss out on the bright lights of Champions League football, but it's either be on the bench there or get playing time in Nottingham. And then someone coming in from Torino, Chloe Aina. And they've sent out a few people, Sam Sturridge going all the way to Nashville, of all places.
Yes.
And Cafu, no, not that Cafu, another one. Lingard, Andre Ayew, Colback, and Taylor all gone for free. So it does look to me as though it could be a new starting lineup. And in addition to Ismail Jacobs, who is a rumoured player, there is also some talk about getting Matthew Turner in from Arsenal, given that Raya might be heading over to Arsenal to challenge Aaron Ramsdale. And Matt Turner, of course, going to Forest would make quite a bit of sense because Turner deserves to play first-team football. And if Arteta sees it fit to make Ramsdale his golden boy, then Turner might not get a look in. And he deserves to be playing first-team football given his status as the number one for his country. And an interesting trivia, of course, is that his teammate will be Wayne Hennessy, who, of course, was on the opposite side of him when they played in Qatar. And both teams shared a 1-1 draw. I thought Turner had an outstanding World Cup. Hennessy did okay, but blotted his copybook with that ridiculous challenge. And then Danny Ward came in and didn't really do himself justice at all, it must be said. But that's another story for another day. 84 yellow cards is not a good look, but they haven't had any dismissals. And the thing about Nottingham Forest and Steve Cooper is that they did sign several players last season, and some of those players, of course, are on their way out. And it will be very interesting to see what sort of budget he's been given. He hasn't had too much in terms of incomings, although Elanga does provide some decent quality and experience. Chris Wood also some experience, having played with both Newcastle and Burnley. And this is a team which obviously will be looking to try to, make a better fist of staying in the Premiership. But by many accounts, Cooper was lucky to have kept his job, especially when they were going through a dreadful run, which saw them go into a relegation battle. Then they had another run which saw them go back up the table, and then they were dragged back down again. And, of course, with the Bournemouth interest, I do not know if Stephen Cook will get much game time this season. I'm surprised that he hasn't been told that he can leave. He will obviously want to look to try and play a little bit more this season than he did last season, as will quite a few other players in that squad. But Cooper will have a lot on his hands trying to keep as many players as he can happy. And it is a good shout that he could end up being sacked if things don't go their way. But I do like some of the football that Newcastle United have produced. The fact that they've kept Brennan Johnson in their team is something that really, really makes me quite happy because I know he wasn't their leading goal scorer, that honor going to Mr. Awaniyi, but Johnson, for me, was their player of the season for what he lent to the team going forward. And certainly injuries to certain players like Toffolo and a few others did not help them. Of course, Henderson getting injured didn't help, and Navas came in and got injured near the end of the season. So Hennessy ended up seeing out the season, I think. But, injuries weren't their best friends last season, as I said. So it will be tough to see if, the players will be kept fit. And Cooper also will have to make sure he gets as many of his players as possible enough game time to keep them happy. But it will be difficult. Other teams will be will strengthen, and they will look to try and make sure they get the better of them this time around. Maybe they'll find Forest out. I don't know. I actually think that this time around, I do predict another relegation battle for them. I don't see them getting relegated, but that might only be because Cooper might get fired midway, and then another manager will come in and steady the ship and see them to safety. So I'm going to stick my neck out and say that they will finish right smack in between Fulham and Burnley. A repeat of their 16th position.
Wow, Matt, what do you think?
Well, just a little update. Steve Cook, Forest and QPR are in advanced talks about a transfer to QPR. So chances are Steve Cook will be on his way. For me, Forest, like Manny's touched on. I said a little bit about the manager before we started filming. Relegation battle for me. Again, there's 3 weaker teams than them, but I think they'd be down there. So I agree. Smack bang between Fulham and Burnley, but I don't think Burnley should be where they are. But I'll bring that up a little bit later.
Right. So I have got them down for 14th. But again, I've been outvoted. So
let me hear your reasoning, Craig, because obviously you and Matt have been doing a lot of work on this. Why do you think they'll finish 14th?
I just think they've got something about them. I think Chris Wood will get some goals. I think that they've got that little bit more experience, that little bit more stability now. Last season, they didn't have that. They made a lot of signings. I'm not saying that they're going to be, because I have them down for 14th, which is at the bottom or at the end of that mid-table batch. But I think they'll do slightly better than what they did last season.
Well, yeah, that's a fair argument. But I just disagree with that.
Fair enough.
Squad perspective.
I think squad harmony will be key. There will be some players who will grumble about not getting game time, and if that affects the harmony of the team, then the team could be in trouble. But that isn't a bad shout, Craig. I'll grant you that.
Matt, where are we going now? We are running out of teams now, and it's all becoming. There's nobody in that relegation battle. There's nobody in the Champions League, and we haven't picked a champion at the moment. So where are we going?
Well, we're going to Manny's place.
Right. Okay. I think it's only fair that Manny has his say on this.
Transfer window. 3 players come in. We've spent quite a lot of money, but for 3 players, not really the best. And there are some rumored transfers coming in. I would not mind having Julian Alvarez coming in at all. Lavia would also be really good. I remember how he bossed the midfield when the Saints came marching into the Emirates and nearly stole 3 points from us. And obviously, we've said goodbye to Mr. Xhaka. We've said goodbye to Marie. Ainsley Maitland-Niles has also left the club. Nicolas Pepe also should be on his way to Besiktas. And as I mentioned earlier, Matt Turner should be on his way to Nottingham Forest. And I'm just taking a look at the bottom right-hand corner. I will come to that in a minute, I promise you. A lot of debate right now has been about our pre-season, and I always consider these pre-season games to be glorified scrimmages. I've said that once, and I'm going to say it again. And, we yesterday had the Emirates Cup where we huffed and puffed and finally managed to beat Monaco via penalty shootout. A certain Mr. Ramsdale defying expectations and somehow saving a penalty. Bang the drums, everyone. And we will come to that later, of course. But it's been up and down. I mean, we were dire against Manchester United. We did quite well against Barcelona, but still conceded 3. The MLS All-Stars weren't worthy of being called opposition. And from what I saw against a Monaco team that should have finished higher in Ligue 1 but didn't, we were given a lot of trouble. Yusuf Fofana was cooking our midfield. Pretty much, we were like fried eggs on a frying pan, literally. That's how cooked we were getting. And their left back, Maripan, couldn't really head a ball or shoot, but he was, keeping us at bay quite brilliantly. Of course, Eddie Nketiah did score an equaliser with a tap-in, but our defence at times, especially given that Kieran Tierney did not start and the new transfer, Urian Timber, was in at left back, and I think at times he and Takehiro Tomiyasu were switching. We didn't know who was playing at left back and who was playing at right back, and that crazy inverted stuff was causing problems for them, but also for us, because as I said, Fofana, Golovin and company were just at times having a field day with the crosses coming in. And had Wissam Ben Yedder found his scoring boots, we could have easily conceded 2 or 3 in that first half. So how Mr. Redknapp would predict that we would finish champions, I am not all sure. Because we've seen near the end of last season how the defensive issues caused by the inverted system of Arteta caused us a few problems. We looked sloppy on many, many occasions. And, losing those games in succession, especially against Brighton and Nottingham Forest, it really was a kick in the teeth. And we just didn't seem to show any seriousness in terms of going for that championship. And when we lost to City at the Etihad, I mean, that was confirmation that we just didn't have the minerals to take it even further. So why Harry would predict that we'd be champions, I have no idea. Discipline-wise, 52 yellow cards, hallelujah. 56 offsides. Maybe the system is working offensively, but defensively, we are... I mean, we might have conceded only 43 goals, but still, it's the nature of the goals that we conceded and the timing that really are, a big problem. And that's why they say, there are lies, there are damned lies, and then there are stats. And, the season we had, finishing second in the league was, we could have won the whole thing, though. And I believe you predicted, Craig, that we'd win. Again, as with your Newcastle prediction, you fell one place short. But a 4th round finish in the FA Cup and a 3rd round finish in the EFL Cup, and that embarrassing exit in the round of 16 of the Europa League. I mean, those were the types of defeats, gentlemen, that made people like myself, stark raving angry, not just mad, angry. And it really begs the question, does Arteta have the bottle to really make sure that he can pull out the results he needs? Our overdependence on Saka last season cost us, and several players, went off the boil at the worst possible time. I'm going to stick my neck out and say that we should be able to finish in the Champions League, but we are not going to recreate the success of finishing second. I say success with air quotations. We definitely will not be champions. Sorry, Mr. Redknapp. But we should finish 4th. And we will finish 4th behind, a team which is expected to be there and 2 teams which will have strengthened very well and will definitely look to try to put one over on us.
Right. Well, Matt, what do you think is going to happen with Arsenal?
Well, Maddie's sort of blown me out of the ballpark with this one, because they're his team and he knows a lot more about Arsenal than I do. But I've just got this feeling. Now, last season I predicted City to win the league.
Yeah.
Obviously, the hype about Haaland at the time and all that. For me, and you'll see when we put our own leagues up, Arsenal win the league. But I'm going to agree with Mr. Manny for the sake of this tier list, and we'll put them into Champions League.
Oh, you've really put a curveball there, Matt, because, of course, I said that they're going to win the league, and I'm going to stand by that.
Okay, well, I'll stand with you then. That's 2 against 1. Arsenal win the league.
Are you two taking the mickey? Come on.
So the Arsenal fan has said that they won't win the league, but the Bournemouth fans say they will.
Not to mention the ex-Bournemouth manager. For Pete's sake.
Oh, God, yeah, Harry did say, didn't
Yes, he did. He did. Harry did say
3 against 1.
Arsenal will finish there. And honestly, I've got a feeling Declan Rice will be electric. And I think Arsenal are going to be in for a very, very good season.
Oh,
Have
I'll
a
tell you
season
what, Rice
quality.
looked a bit undercooked during pre-season, so he's really going to have to get cooking.
See the
And,
thing for me.
Yeah?
Yeah, sorry, you carry on, Manny. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Matt, please, by all means.
See, the thing is, it's funny, isn't it? Because, when, like, for me, I don't know about you two. When I watch Bournemouth in a different way to the way I watch other teams.
Mm.
So if I'm sitting down and I'm watching Arsenal play somebody, for example, I'll watch the game differently. Now, for me, the way I saw Arsenal start last season, now the game that we had at Dean Court,
Yeah,
it's probably the best performance I've seen Arsenal put in at Dean Court. I thought the way they were passing the ball, the way they kept possession, the way they attacked, to me, it was almost like watching City on top form. Yeah, they did have that blip during the season. Obviously, like Manny said, Europa League, they should never have gone out in that game. They were appalling. The game against Forest, they were appalling.
yeah.
So there is areas where, they did let themselves down big time last year. But I just think this year, there's got to be a time when there's a break in the cycle of City winning the league. Just like when United used to. Arsenal would pop up and win the league. Or Chelsea in between United's dominance. There's got to be something there. And I think with the players, and obviously we'll get on with City shortly, but I think with the players that Arsenal have got, I think they're in a better position than probably Liverpool to challenge. So I personally, from what I've seen last year to who they've brought in, for me, Arsenal are champions.
I agree.
Oh, boys, you are literally putting your eggs in the basket based on Rice coming in, Rice, baby, and all of that. We signed a guy also in Kai Havertz who has been living off that Champions League winning goal for the past few seasons and who was dreadful for Chelsea last season. And I take your point. Listen, this weekend we got the Community Shield final again, the Community Shield against Manchester City. That could perhaps be an opportunity for Arteta to win maybe some decent silverware if he can get his team selection right. But I just think with Arteta, his insistence on that inverted system will be his downfall because good managers are able to adapt and evolve. I just don't see that in Arteta. And I think the other teams will look to strengthen. They will, definitely look to, try and put one over on them. And Arsenal, again, let's not forget, they benefited from the likes of Liverpool going off the boil, Chelsea going off the boil, United not firing on all cylinders, and even City during the first half of the season were absolutely dire. So let's not, that's one of the reasons why. I try to be a realist, but I'll tell you what, Craig, you're on our Instagram chat now. If you share this video with the guys over there, they're going to love you to bits. At least some of them, I tell you.
Definitely. We're going to do that. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to start a row now. And I'm going to pick Wolverhampton Wanderers as the next team. So let's have a look.
Hopefully you're not throwing us to the Wolves, are you?
Well, Wolves last season finished 13th. FA Cup was third. Got to the quarterfinals of the FL Cup. Ruben Neves was the top scorer, along with Daniel Podence. Only 6 goals, so not great figures there. Right. Okay. Of course, Neves has left. Jimenez has left. There has been quite a few changes. Nathan Collins has gone to Brentford. But this is really where I think, there's a big debate for me. I think Lopetegui, is a decent manager. He did a decent job after taking over from Bruno Lage. I think Wolves are going to be fine. But you can see what Harry thinks in the corner. Matt, take it away. Go on.
Well, for me, unfortunately, they go down.
I can't see it. I honestly can't see it. I think there's 3 teams, and I'm not, I've got no affiliation with Wolves at all, but I cannot see Wolves being relegated.
Yeah, that's because you secretly love Everton, whereas I can't see Everton getting relegated. So that's where. Do you see what I mean? It's.
See, I think Everton. I don't want to see Everton go down, but I think the Wolves are a better side than Everton are. That's just that is just how I see it.
Yeah, and I can see why you say it, but I just think there's something there this year that the bubble may burst.
Mm.
There's going to be someone that goes down that's been in the Premier League for a little while. I mean, look at Saints. They've been in the Premier League for how many years consecutively?
Well, exactly.
10 years consecutive they were in the league.
Yeah, they went up in 2012, 2013, if I'm right in thinking.
And I think the bubbles burst a bit with this super agent they've had.
Yeah. George Mendes.
Yeah, and for me, I just losing Neves. I mean, he only scored him. How many goals did he score last year? 6.
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of, in terms of goal scoring, they're kind of in a similar position to what Bournemouth were. But I just think there comes a time when someone that's established, because you can say they're established, they are established. That's the only fair way to describe them. But there is always a time when an established side will get relegated. It's just my trail of thought.
I can't see it. I tell you what, we need to bring this up because Manny, this is the state of play. So I think Wolves will be fine. Matt thinks Wolves are going down. What do you make of Wolves?
The worst part about all of this is that I am tempted to say, let's talk about Everton's chances and then we can have a bit of a discussion. Obviously, Wolves have said goodbye to quite a few players. You mentioned Ruben Neves. Another notable player who's left is the Portuguese legend, João Moutinho. Nearly 150 caps for the Portuguese team, but obviously his form dipped. He was an omission from Fernando Santos' squad for the World Cup, and I don't think, he's... coming back to play for them unless he experiences a huge upturn in form. Of course, if Ronaldo can get picked, Moutinho should be, but then chalk and cheese. But there are a few players, obviously, who will be on their way, who are on their way out, and he's got to try to rebuild that team. I am glad that Jose Sá is still there for what it's worth, but I'm surprised that other clubs haven't really, come in for him as of yet. Decent quality keeper, I would say. Lopetegui's actually done a pretty decent job with Wolves. I mean, I remember when he was managing Real Madrid, it was a complete flop. And of course, when he was managing Spain, his dalliance with Real Madrid was completely stupid and ill-advised, and it cost him the chance to continue working with La Roja, which, managing your country for me has to be the pinnacle, and to throw that away was rather silly. But he was able to do what Bruno Lage couldn't quite do, and make sure that he got a tune out of the boys. But then again, when a manager gets sacked and a new one comes in, the new one almost invariably gets a tune. But I think there's also, I think you did mention, Craig, that Lopetegui was one of your picks to receive the sack quite quickly. I'm going to stick my neck out here and say I don't think Wolves are going to get relegated, though. I think they're going to be the type of team that will also somehow find a way to win. And their home record at Molineux last season was actually quite outstanding. And I don't see any unrest within the board that would also make the atmosphere problematic. Whereas at Everton, they seem to have their problems. And obviously, we're going to come to Everton. I actually do think that Wolverhampton will stay up, but they might end up possibly 14th, I would say. And I did pick West Ham to finish 14th, so Wolves might end up 13th, and it'll be a struggle between those two W's to try to stay up. Because I just think Everton look in absolute shambles, and I really don't know what they've done to try to assage the situation. At least, getting in someone like Doherty, who's played with Tottenham and also had a decent stint with Atletico Madrid. There's some experience right there. And, they're in the process of rebuilding the team and obviously trying to bring in some players who can lend that grit. It'll be a struggle between them and West Ham to finish either 13th or 14th, but they should finish in a fairly comfortable mid-table position. It's either that or getting relegated. I don't see them getting relegated. I think Everton, once we come to them, will just have far too many problems up their sleeve.
Well, that is an interesting spin on it, because I've got them just to survive. Matt's got them to be relegated. Manny's got them mid-table. I think and we can put more teams than it says in the brackets into those categories, and we'll just have to move them around. So what that means is
you could possibly put Wolves into that just staying up category, and maybe I would say move Fulham up one spot.
Well, I tell you what, shall we leave them there for the moment, and then we can rejig them at the end? But Manny, it's your turn now. Where are you going?
Well, I mean, I've started, so I have to finish. Let's go to Goodison Park.
To Goodison Park we go, to Everton. And we said that we was going to have a round now, didn't we?
Like I said, I've started, so I'll finish. A little mastermind there for you. I missed that program. That was Club TV at its finest. I mean, I remember, when I was a youngster, I'd go out on a Sunday, but I'd always want to try and come back to make sure I was there at about 5 minutes past 9, sit in front of the telly, tune on BBC One, and see Magnus Magnusson hosting Mastermind. Those classic places. I've started, so I'll finish. And
there it is.
Everton. There's a reason why here. I mean, obviously, a name familiar to you lot is Dan Juma. You know him quite well, on loan from Villarreal, and Ashley Young, of course, has joined them from Villa. A very experienced signing, but again, like Milner, it'll be very interesting to see how much game time he actually gets. Plenty of outgoings: Moise Keane, Ellis Sims, Niels and Kunku. Asmir Begovic has gone to QPR, and so. Do they have a new goalkeeper who will challenge Jordan Pickford? I don't know. Yerry Mina, the Colombian defender, has also left for free, along with Andros Townsend, who was also on the books of Crystal Palace, if I'm not wrong. And there are some rumoured transfers. I do like Wilfried Gnonto, outstanding for Leeds United.
Yeah.
Brobby, if I'm correct, is a Dutch Met player. I think he has been sort of on the fringes of the national team, but I haven't really seen too much of him. And last season, of course, they had 79 yellow cards and 2 reds. Connor Cody was there on loan last season from Wolves, but he has now since gone to Leicester City. And I just take a look at this particular team and say, you know what? Sean Dyche has maintained his faith with some of the core players who have, helped him stay up. And some of these guys, I mean, Keane did have a few games. Begovic played one or two, but was never going to displace Pickford. Mina was a bit of a surprise. I thought he was quite decent quality, but obviously maybe he felt it was time for a new challenge at end of his contract and all that. And again, they haven't made anywhere near enough signings to show me that they're serious about avoiding the near fiasco that occurred when they could have also gotten relegated. It just goes to show that you are never too big a club to be relegated. And there still doesn't seem to be any kind of end to the unrest within the board. And in as much as I do admire the work that Sean Dyche did, you can't keep dancing with danger, or you can't keep playing with fire and not expect to get burnt at least once, if that makes any sense. And in as much as Sean Dyche does have a deserved reputation as being a relegation specialist, I just think with the squad that he has and, the work that he's done in terms of trying to bring players in, which has been non-existent, there have been several outgoings, which, does make a great deal of sense. But what are they willing to do to improve their style of play? And the 4-5-1 formation they used, or the 5-4-1, or whatever it may be, is there still any plan to try to get another striker? Because Dwight McNeil with 7 goals, McNeil is supposed to be a midfielder. What happened to Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Injured. What happened to Neil Maupay, who came in from Brighton? Didn't really do too very much. Whatever happened to Demarai Gray, of whom a lot was hoped? Where are the goals going to come from?
I think they're a complete mess of a club. And it's such a shame because they're a big football club. They're a proud football club. They're a good football club. But, Harry thinks because mainly Sean Dyche that they'll be just about okay. I can't see it. I honestly can't see it. Danjuma, now I know that he did very well for us in the Championship, but, when you look at it, how much of an effect has he had in the Premier League? He didn't really star for Spurs, and to be fair, the only game where you could say he really stood out was against ourselves when he scored that goal.
Fat lot of good that did.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, Dunga Atara with that heroic goal, I think.
Yeah. So, as much as I don't want to see it, because like I say, it's a good football club, I can't see him getting out of this. Or if they do get out of it, they're just going to transition into the Sean Dyche way of playing, which we know how that ends in the end. Sean Dyche did a fantastic job with Burnley for so many years, but at the same time, is that really what Everton fans want? They've spent a hell of a lot of money, and sadly for them, I can see them opening their new stadium in the Championship.
It is absolutely sad, Craig, but it's not for nothing that they say the fish rots from the head down. If you've got a rotten board, everything filters down, deeper and down, and it affects the club, it affects the manager, it affects the players. And that's why I'm a little bit surprised when you consider that it could be a shootout between Everton and Wolves to end up going down, because, Everton will tell you that they were lucky last time around, but what seriousness have they shown to really make sure they avoid that this time around? So I'm sorry, Toffees fans. I do love the taste of toffee, but I think, you can't score for toffee. That's the problem. So it's down to the Championship. You go.
Matt, do you want to have your say on this? Because me
point.
and you was going on about...
No point.
No point. Right.
Well, why is there no point, though? I mean...
Because I don't think they'll go down. They're in a relegation battle, 100%. They're not going to be anywhere above where I predict they're going to be.
Harry agreed with you, though, didn't he? Harry said that they will be fine. But
he did say they'd be scrapping, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I 110%. I mean, with the points that you have both made, you've made valid points, like Manny with the board. I mean, and like you, Craig, you say it's a shambles. It is. But there's just something there for me that keeps them up, and that is, and like Harry said, for me, and you probably hit the nail on the head, Craig. They're probably going to transform how they play
Mm.
into the Dyche way. Now, yeah, okay, they eventually got relegated at Burnley, but
Yes.
this is a whole totally different kettle of fish. He's working with different caliber of player, I would say, than what he was working with at Burnley at the time.
I think
Well,
he's
I
got
mean,
more restrictions than he had at Burnley, because the thing was at
But
Burnley he didn't have these FFP restrictions that he's got at Everton.
no, true, but then he's not got a bad crop of player in some respects as individual players.
I mean,
Not saying
obviously he knows McNeil and Tarkowski from his days at Turf Moor anyway.
well, yeah,
Mm.
he knows them too. I don't know. I mean, I agree with what you're both saying, but I just don't agree with where you're placing them. That's just my personal opinion.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. At the moment, it's 2-1, but you do side with Harry on this. So,
Well, at the end of the day, you know, you said they'd go down last season.
mm,
They didn't,
because it was a
and I
shambles, but it
and
was
I
only close.
well, of course it was. I mean, look how many times when you go back to Letizier's days, always in the relegation zone, but managed to stay up. So,
Well, because they had Letitia, they had to stay up, really.
well, yeah, but it's just my point of view.
Right. So we've had Everton. Where are you going, Matt?
I am going. I'm going.
You've got 6 to choose from now.
I'm going AFC Bournemouth.
So us. So I tell you what, the figures there look, well, it's more money than we've ever spent before. Of course, if you look at it over the space of the 2 transfer windows, I believe it's something like, is it 150 million or something ridiculous like that?
To be honest with you, I haven't even really paid much attention to how much we spent. I'm looking more on how we take that next step forward. Obviously, with the change of manager shows a good intent from the club that we want to move forward. Um, you know, like I said back in January, which I'm sure you'll both remember.
Yeah.
I was sat on the fence with Gary O'Neill as a long-term option, and I did call it then, saying I think Bill Foley would bring his own man in during the summer, which he did. So, I know a lot of people are shocked that the managers changed. But to be fair, I think by changing the manager, that has shown an intent that the club wants to take that next step. The signings we've made, really excited about Kirkes.
Yeah.
Like him, and what I've seen of him, I like. Clivert, just the association with his dad is
It's
interesting.
amazing, isn't it?
But I really want this move to work out for him, because he's had a few loan moves from Roma, and he did well last year in a very, very poor Valencia side. He was kind of the shining star. So I'm hoping that will really kick us forward. The goalkeeping department, I think we've done well by letting Travs go on loan and signing Radu from Inter with the option to sign him permanently.
Is Randolph still there, by the way?
Randolph is still there. Yeah, he's still here.
Mhm.
Obviously, we're rumoured to be signing Alex Scott. Apparently, that's advanced. So, if that comes off, that's a good, a very good signing.
Yeah.
We all know the manager wants to strengthen in midfield. I agree. Obviously, losing Jefferson's a big hit, but at the same time, I still think we need something else up top. Some people are saying is Samane the solution. I don't think so. Like I've said
No.
all along, for me, I think in some respects, the football now, if we were to play to his strengths a little bit more, might suit Kiefer Moore. So Kiefer Moore this season, I know he's been linked with a move away, but if he stays, he could actually be an effective plan B this season. And I've also, from what I've read, and I don't know if because I know you've done a lot of research on the manager and the interviews you've done recently, Craig. But
Yeah.
what I've researched is apparently he will get Dom Solanke scoring goals in the style of play. So, do we need a striker? I still think we do, but the big question here is do we improve on last season? I think with the decision the club has made, I think it's expected. Do we expect this regime to finish 15th or 16th? I don't think so.
Neither do I.
I think we need to kick on now. Listening to Talksport this week, I think it was Andy Townsend was on there, and another pundit, all predicted Bournemouth to go down. Which, forget the size of the stadium, forget the size of the club. I mean, the club's beyond that now. Look at what we're signing.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at the players on the pitch. Don't look at the size of the stadium. People go, "Oh, you got a small stadium, you can go down." What a load of nonsense! Look. You got no. You got a small fan base. Rubbish. Look at what we've signed and what we've got on the pitch.
We've got a massive catchment area. And, that firstly, to quash those, people that do keep going on about the
Yeah,
size of the
that
stadium,
for me is just nonsense. It doesn't
it's
matter.
rubbish.
At the end of the day,
It's
it's what's on the pitch.
we've made sensible signings in the right places.
Yeah. I would totally agree. But for me, it's the ambition of the club now.
Yeah.
It's Bill Foley's vision, and I think if we finish, let's put it this way, if we start struggling within the first 10 games, I think there might be a decision made. That's just my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to start off firing all cylinders? Possibly not. But for me, I think it would be, from the decisions the club's made, I think if we finish where we finished last season, I think that's a failure.
Yeah, completely agree.
So for me, and I don't know what Manny thinks, but for me, we have got to be the top end of the bottom half of the table. So I personally think we need to finish 11th. That's not me
Ooh,
predicting. That's me saying that's where I think, with the vision, for us to say we've made that next step up,
yeah,
that's where we need to finish to then next season kick on again.
you've read my mind, Matt.
I've got you lot finishing in mid-table too. 12th is my prediction, but
No, it's not bad.
11th is
See, I'd
11th
be
is certainly not a bad shout either.
Shall we go for 11th? Be generous to ourselves, because that's what I've put down.
I've got 11th on mine. And that's purely, I mean, that's not really a prediction. That's more an expectant from my point of view.
Yeah, I would
Um,
expect that as well, and I think Bill
because,
Foley would only be happy with that.
yeah. I mean, are we going to do a Newcastle and overperform? Because in some respects, they did overperform what was expected of them last season. Are we going to break into the Europa Conference League? Well, let's not get carried away. I mean, if we finish 9th next season, what a bloody season that is. But could you imagine finishing 11th and having a good couple of cup runs or something? That's improvement.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think we will, edge, what Bill Foley, I think, will want is an improvement. Not, we're not talking, oh, yeah, we expect to get in 7th place. What he's expecting is slow progression to get to a point where we can be competing for Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen in a day. And, I think, I think, it seems like the philosophy and his hunger and how he's got Las Vegas Golden Knights, a team that didn't exist, to win the NHL, in the middle of the bloody desert, shows that the man's got some balls to actually make these tough decisions. So don't disagree. I am going to go with 11th as well. Manny, do you agree with that?
I was going for 12th, but I'm going to go with the flow and say 11th.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. So we are in 11th. So we're actually getting near to the end. We've only got 5 teams left. Let's go for one of the new boys. And that new boy is Luton Town. So a bit of a surprise, Luton, coming into the Premier League. Of course, come through the playoffs. Believe it or not, this season, I think it was this season. 10 years ago was the season they finally got out of the conference.
Yes. Yeah.
They got beat in, was it York City and Wimbledon in 2 successive playoff finals?
I think
I
it
might be
was.
wrong in that, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the fairy tale everybody wants, isn't it? This is
yeah.
kind of, this takes me back to when we first got promoted.
Well, it takes me back to
You know,
-17 when they
and
were on -30.
yeah, no, but I'm just talking about they're in the Premier League now. When we first went into the Premier League, this takes me back to then,
Yeah,
and how everybody was like, they're down, they're down. Everyone's saying it. I mean, yes, I have predicted them to get relegated, but not without a bloody good fight. Now, this is the fairy tale everybody wants. I'd love Luton to stay up. I really would. I think it would, be great for football in general.
yeah.
Um, you know, they've earned the right to be here, just like we did. They've earned the right
Mhm.
to be here. Everybody's going to write them off. And I think, we had a conversation a little while ago, and you kind of likened it to Blackpool.
Yeah.
They came up and had a good battle. They stayed up, didn't they, for one season? And then
No, they went straight
they,
back down.
they go
Yeah,
straight back down, was it?
yeah,
But not
but
without a really good fight. It was on the last day of the season, wasn't it?
it was, yeah. They
Yeah.
were, I think they actually went ahead, you know, against Manchester United of all teams,
That's it. I remember
and
now. Yeah,
then
you're
they
right.
got pegged back, didn't they?
Yeah.
And Luton, I'm expecting a similar sort of fight. I can't see them staying up. And I'm sorry, Luton fans, I can't see them staying up, but they will put in a battle. And I think their transfer activity is sensible, just in case the worst comes to the worst, and to build the future of that club, to
I
build Power
imagine
Court.
absolutely right. I mean, they're being cautious. If they, go back down, I think the stadium is a big thing that they want to redevelop. Or, I mean, I don't know if anyone's been to Luton Town, but what an experience!
It is, yeah.
It's a great ground to go to.
Mhm.
And it's grounds like that now that this country used to be full of. That we now got all these wonderful stadia. Um, a bit like when Brentford's, I've said on here before, I
Griffin
used to
Park.
love going to Griffin Park. You know, just an old Victorian ground. And that's what obviously, Luton. I mean, you go into the away end, you go in between two houses. I don't know. I'm assuming that's the away end now. It's almost like you're going to their back garden. That's some stairs. You can see everyone's washing out. It's like looking at Coronation Street. And then you go in, and then you go into the stadium. It's just a wonderful wonderful experience. And I mean, I haven't been there for, oh God,
It's a long time ago.
This is -17 season. But yeah, this is the fairy tale in it. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if they stayed up? But I just personally can't see it. I've predicted them to finish 18th because they're going to have a bloody good fight.
Well, let's bring this up. Manny, what do you think is going to happen with Luton?
They're going to finish 19th and sadly go down. And I'll tell you what, it has been a wonderful story. And I share Matt's disdain with people who say that just because you don't have a big stadium, you can't compete. And it has been sort of a fairy tale for them. But again, what sort of signings have they made? Are they also quite serious as well about making sure they give a good fight? And I think one player where they are, of course, in the market to try to get Thomas Kaminski. I think they've signed him already because it is mentioned that he is with Luton Town. But he was, of course, recently with Blackburn Rovers, where he was their first choice keeper for quite a bit of time. So he could certainly prove to be quite a good buy with Harry Iston having gone. And they've got this this guy named Chidozie Ogbene. I knew he looked familiar. Nigerian-born Irish international who has been doing really well for the Republic of Ireland. Yeah. And he, along with Michael Obafemi, have literally been taken to the hearts of the Irish football fans for their terrific performances. And so it's good for Ireland that he is going to be in the Premier League, and I think he could certainly have a role to play in terms of providing a few goals. He, granted, didn't score too many at Rotherham United, but of course his primary position as a winger, you don't expect him to score necessarily too many. 4 goals in 15 for the Republic of Ireland isn't too bad. Again, though, I just think you can see from the signings there that Luton won't really have that type of a pull. I do believe there are some other players from big clubs who are set to come in. I can't really put my finger on whom it may be, but I think they're probably going to go down. It will be sadly a fight between them and the other new boy, Sheffield United, to see who will take the wooden spoon. But I can't see Luton staying for long. But I'll tell you what, they're going to take some really good memories with them and try and come back stronger, believe you me. And let's not forget, Manchester City had a dreadful few years where they were relegated to what was then the second division.
Yep.
Fought their way back to the Premiership, got relegated, came back not too long afterwards, and look where they are now. Luton can take some inspiration from that.
Yeah, completely agree. So Luton are going into the relegation zone, but I do agree with Matt. I think that they'll finish 18th. They will put up such a fight.
So you think Everton are that awful, do you, Craig?
Oh God, don't start him off.
I think so. Yeah, I think Luton will put up a fight and finish above Everton. Probably only just, but I think they'll put up a fight.
Okay, then.
There we are. Manny, it's your turn next. We've got 4 left.
Let's go to the other new boy, the Blades.
The Blades. So Sheffield United. Of course.
Blades are being sharpened already.
They are. Here we are. So last season they were the Championship runner-up. Semi-finals of the FA Cup, the first round of the EFL Cup. What do you make of what they've done?
You're talking to me, right?
Yes.
Last season was certainly not a bad season by any means. It was a terrific season. FA Cup semi-finalists losing to Manchester City.
Yeah.
They had a really good run, it has to be said. And I would certainly go so far to say that they more than punched above their weight. But of the transfers coming in, again, I take a look at Slimane, I think he's obviously, I think he's a Tunisian international signed from Brøndby in Denmark. And then Yasser Larouchi from Troyes on loan. Benny Traore. They spent very little, but they got some players in. They've also gotten rid of the long-serving Billy Sharp, among a few others. Jack O'Connell has also gone. And they're obviously trying to rebuild a team for the Premier League and get rid of some of the players who might have had some experience in the Premiership, but obviously maybe have served their purpose and can't really, hack it anymore in the eyes of the management. And of course, I take a look at a certain Tuan Zebe, who has been earlisted as a possible transfer. He'd be a decent buy, and some experience of playing over at Bramall Lane would be quite good for him in a way in the Premiership. But again, it really just begs the question: are they completely equipped? I took a look at the Luton squad which they've got, and there aren't really too many names. Obviously, Tom Lockyer from for Wales is one name that comes out, that sort of sticks out. I know they've signed Issa Kabore, the Burkina Faso international, for Luton. But now we'll go to Sheffield United and take a look at their squad right now. And obviously, the squad they've got is obviously there have been some updates as of the 18th of July. They've made some transfers, obviously, and some players who stand out to me. Adam Davies, Welsh reserve goalkeeper. Wes Fotheringham has been there for quite a bit of time. I know that Austin Trusty has joined them from Arsenal, and clearly there was a bit of controversy around him because, he, of course, was signed by us, but apparently just as more of a PR pick, which was really, taking the mickey. George Baldock, of course, is still very much a part of their plans. Greek international. Chris Basham is a name we remember quite well. Yeah, still at the club. John Fleck, of course, is a former Scottish international and has done quite well. John Egan still involved. They do have a good workable squad with some players having plenty of Premiership experience. But again, it's a question of do those players necessarily have the absolute quality that will really make you sit up and take notice and make you think this team will definitely be a team to be reckoned with? And I take a look and I say again, I can't really see it. I can't really see they're going to try and punch above their weight and try and really fight hard. But again, I just don't see much happening, to be honest. I really don't see them, doing too much. So it will be a bit of a fight between them and Luton Town to see who will end up finishing 19th, because finishing 20th will not be good. But they're also going to put up a fight, don't get me wrong. And maybe if they, band together as a team, they could pull off a few surprises. I just don't think they will necessarily end up, getting the results they need. But it should be fun having the Blades back in the Premiership.
Right, here we go. So, Matt, where do you think the Blades will finish?
20th.
Manny, where do you think the Blades will finish?
I did say Luton Town would finish 19th. I'm going to change that and say that Sheffield United should finish 19th and Luton will be at the bottom.
I disagree with you, Manny. I'm going to go for Sheffield United, and I'm going to agree with Matt. Rock bottom. I think Heckingbottom's done a fantastic job. I think part of their problem is nothing to do with Heckingbottom or the team. It's to do with the mess of in the boardroom. And I think they're really going to... they're a good club, and I just can't see them staying up. I think they're going to be rock bottom.
Okay, good call.
So, Matt, we've only got 3 left. 3 big teams. Which one are you going to go for?
United.
So, Manchester United, of course, finished 3rd, just in Newcastle's position. They stole it from them last season. But What did you make of Man United last season? Because they started off really, really, really slowly.
I mean, I remember watching Brentford take them apart.
Yeah.
It was after a game we played. And I think it was the same. I think we might have been at City that day. Anyway, and yeah, they did start slowly, but you can see, well, that in my opinion, from an outsider looking in, I think there's a project there now.
Yeah.
I think they've got a manager that, finally they're happy with. Obviously, it's just the owners or the fans want sorted now, don't they? This ownership malarkey that's been going on for God knows how long. Whereas now, I think they've got a manager that commands respect from the players. I mean, he took no nonsense, did he? I mean, look at Ronaldo. He didn't last long with him, did he?
No.
I think Mason Mount's an interesting transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Be interested to see how he fits in. I know David De Gea is gone. Obviously, he was Player of the Year for like 3 seasons in a row at one point, which is really unheard of for a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So he in the last decade he's been a big player for Man United, but obviously everybody has to move on. The keeper that they've signed from Inter, I saw him play a couple of times in the Champions League last year,
I like him.
and I like him, definitely like him. So they've signed a good replacement. Obviously, there was a time when United lost Schmeichel and they signed Bosnich and he didn't work out, and then they signed Massimo Taibi and he didn't work out, and so I'm sure United fans are hoping that they don't go through that sort of goalkeeping dilemma again. But I think on the whole, with this project, I mean, okay, they only won the Carabao Cup, as it's only the Carabao Cup, but I mean, it's a trophy. He's a Man United manager that's won a trophy, so they're stepping in the right direction. I think the Europa League was the most disappointing thing. I actually had them down to win it.
Yeah.
Last season, the Europa League, because I thought they were strong enough to obviously win it. I think Rashford, it's important that his form continues. I know that they're in this rumoured transfer. He was on the bench on Saturday at Dean Court. He didn't get on. Rasmus. Apparently that's well into advanced talks with the player now, so that should be getting announced. I think it's like £72 million transfer.
Yeah.
And they reckon that he could be United's version of Haaland, but we'll see. The nice story about this though is Johnny Evans going back there. Kind of full circle for him. He signed a short-term contract, doesn't he, to help out, which is nice for the player because obviously he was at United for a long time. For me, last season they finished third. I think that's where they finish again, to be honest with you. I don't think they're strong enough to challenge. They're back in the Champions League, which is where everyone thinks United belongs. But I just think there's a little bit more to this project before they start challenging again.
Wow. Manny.
Couldn't agree more.
Man United?
Couldn't agree more. I actually have them finishing third as well. For fairly obvious reasons. I just think that, they're going to find ways to improve. And obviously being back in the Champions League will be a bit of a bonus. But again, they're going to come up against other teams like City, who are, of course, absolute juggernauts, and Liverpool, who are also going to be, strengthening. And as a nice segue, I think I'd like to take Liverpool next and talk about them. But I think United also have had quite a few outgoings, and they've had some incomings. You've mentioned Onana being one of them, and he is certainly quality. But he also has had a few personal issues. I think some of us will remember how he ended up leaving the Cameroonian World Cup camp and quitting international football. And surely a goalkeeper of his class would want to be playing at the highest level for his nation. But then, his country's loss will end up being the gain of his club's. And the new signings could take some time to settle. Like you, Matt, I want to see Rashford's form improving. I compliment and credit Ten Hag for returning Rashford to something like his best. It had to happen, and I'm glad it did. And I would also definitely go so far to say that with Ten Hag's influence, Rashford will continue to do well. But here's the catch: he has to continue to do well, otherwise he could find himself on the periphery. And after all of the hard work he did, I'm sure he wouldn't want that. So I have United finishing third, but definitely improving with a good Champions League display. They could also maybe win. Will they defend their League Cup? I don't know, but they're going to continue to enjoy some sustainable growth and just get the fans believing again. And I think that could be enough for them for now.
Well, I had them in a completely different position, but I've been outvoted. You've both gone for third. That's where they've gone.
But where did you go for? Please let us know.
I went for sixth.
Ooh, what a call. What made you think that they'd be sixth?
I just think that the two teams left and Aston Villa and Newcastle were stronger.
Oh.
What a take. Wow. We love these opinions. We love this debate. And that's why I love being a part of this group.
This is what's great about this. This is what's great about this tier list.
I love it because I just get to laugh at Craig.
you said let's do Liverpool. I think let's leave Man City to the end. Let's do Liverpool. So
yep.
Of course, a side who had a very disappointing season last season.
Very disappointing indeed. And fifth is certainly not where they would have expected to finish. Fourth round of the League Cup, fourth round of the FA Cup, last 16 the Champions League. Mohamed Salah did recover well to score 30 goals, but I think he will be honest with himself to say that his season wasn't the best, and 235 fouls certainly didn't help their cause. 57 yellow cards is, I suppose, reasonable, I would say. Pretty good. And they've had a lot of outgoings as well. Henderson, Firmino, Milner, Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain. And they're also in the market for Lavia and this chap Colville, who was on loan at Brighton, but on the books at Chelsea. Would certainly be a good signing for them, along with McAllister. He'd help that midfield cook. With Henderson and Milner having gone, it's as if you've lost the leadership of the team. It does look as though Virgil van Dijk will end up getting the captaincy, but that could be the worst thing that could happen to him, because I don't know if you guys have been watching international football, but certainly if you take a look at the Premiership, the Dutchman went completely off the boil. And his form has been absolutely terrible. And I'm one of those people, I remember suggesting to quite a few Liverpool fans that maybe it's time for Van Dijk to be relieved of leadership responsibilities, either at club or for his country, so that he can concentrate on, what he does best and just, get his form back. But a lot of people have said, no, we don't want to run the risk of having someone like Alisson captaining the team. That would be too big a risk, and we're not willing to take that. So Van Dijk could end up captaining the team. They've certainly bought well in terms of getting McAllister and Szoboszlai, who, of course, was a part of the Hungary team that ripped us a new one at Molineux to the tune of 4-0. Their defence, though, is a bit of a worry. It does seem apparent that Trent Alexander-Arnold has no future in the team as a right back, and he could end up being used as a midfielder. So who could come in at right back? One person I would have loved to have seen, fulfilling that role at right back would be Joe Gomez, who did a really good job for them when Liverpool came to the Emirates. He replaced TAA and kept Gabriel Martinelli quiet. His problem is that in addition to having been injured very frequently, he has also not been played in his position of choice by Jurgen Klopp, and that's a big problem. And I don't even know. A big question is: does Gomez have a future at Anfield for many reasons? And I think Van Dijk will certainly be leaning on the likes of Ibrahim Konate, who, of course, was a part of the French team that reached the World Cup final. I believe, if memory serves me right, he started along with. No, he didn't start. It was Upamecano who started, but I think he was a substitute. Maybe my memory fails me, but it's either him or Joel Matip, and Matip was also completely off the boil. So Liverpool do have a bit of strengthening to do, but I wouldn't put it past them to make sure they get the purchases right. Because one thing about this Liverpool team is that they also will realize that their form last season was, especially away from home, was absolutely diabolical. The 7-0 win over Manchester United really did a lot more to paper cracks than anything else. And they know that with at least with Henderson and Milner leaving, they know they have a chance to start from a clean slate, as it were. And it will be interesting to see how this new team, performs in this upcoming season. But one of the biggest problems they had at the time was when Sadio Mane left and Darwin Núñez came in. There was going to be a little bit of a problem in that front three, whether they would gel. But later on in the season, they managed to get their act together and score a lot more goals, which, if you ask me, does give them some hope that they'll be able to survive next season. I mean, obviously there's no Mane, there's no Firmino, but Núñez, Gakpo, and Salah up front, be very afraid. All they need to do is fix that midfield. They've also lost Fabinho, by the way, who's gone to Al Ittihad, so they're going to have to really freshen it up. And Harvey Elliott, I believe, will have a very big role to play next season. But I think Liverpool should do quite well this season. I did have them finishing higher than Arsenal, who I thought would be fourth. But since you lot have put Arsenal as champions, I'm going to say that Liverpool will improve on their fifth place finishing and finish in the top four, probably at in that fourth position, behind both Manchester clubs.
What do you reckon, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. And just to update, Van Dijk has been named as Liverpool captain, with Trent Alexander-Arnold as vice. Man City then
get back into the Champions League, and yeah, we are down to one. I went for Liverpool third, but we'll come to that in a bit. But Man City, let's talk about the champions of everything.
Yeah.
Apart from the EFL Cup.
Yeah, the treble winners.
Yes.
There's nothing. I mean, they are still and will be, continue to be a class side. I just think this is the season where there'll be the break in the cycle.
I don't disagree with that. I think this is the season where we know how good they are. They've got Haaland. Riyad Mahrez is a loss. Of course, David Silva is a loss. I just think that Arsenal have probably just got it. And, out of the two, I can't see anybody competing against those two. I'd be very surprised. I think Man City finish second and the cycle does break.
Totally agree.
I have them continuing as champions for the simple reason that City are the type of team that do not rest on their laurels. You take a look at the outgoings, Ilkay Gundogan, Riyad Mahrez. These are two guys who were pivotal players. I mean, maybe in Mahrez's case, it's not exactly pivotal, but they played their roles in that treble-winning season. And for them to be jettisoned like that, for Gundogan to decide, maybe Gundogan decided that he didn't want to sit around and just pick up a pay packet, being on the bench, or maybe City also decided that maybe his powers were starting to wane a little bit. But you can see that they're not resting on their laurels, and they're certainly trying their best to really evolve and move on, and that's what they're doing with getting Mateo Kovacic is a bit of a surprise. And of course, both of you will remember that City, of course, were locked in that titanic battle with Arsenal to sign Declan Rice. But I still believe, and I have this theory, that City put one over on us by saying, you know what, we're not going to pay through the nose just to get Declan Rice just because you want him as well. You pay through the nose, you get him. We've got Kovacic. We're still going to cook your midfield, and so that's one thing. You can call it a conspiracy theory if you want, but that is one thing that a large number of Arsenal fans are not willing to accept. Why would City suddenly pull out of the race to sign Declan Rice if he were that good? Don't get me wrong, he is good. He's not world class. And of course, the season before, actually, they did spend about 100 million bob getting Jackie Grealish from Aston Villa. But he also had a difficult start. He went on to become exceptionally pivotal for them in their treble race. And, with Rice, I just don't think they saw him as necessarily the answer, because they want some really physically strong midfielders. And I think in Kovacic, they've got someone who might be a bit of a like-for-like replacement for Gundogan. I'm a bit surprised that Kovacic was considered. I thought that maybe his career would be winding down, but clearly he's still doing the business for Croatia at international level. So City decided why not? And City probably looked at us and said, you know what? You can have your Declan Rice. We're still going to cook your midfield week in, week out. And of course, as I mentioned, based on pre-season, Rice has looked a little bit undercooked. So it will remain to be seen. I still think that City will once again finish as champions, but since I've clearly been outnumbered, into second place they go.
There we are. So that is, I agree with Matt. Second. I'm guessing you put them second.
Who? Me?
Man City.
Oh, obviously.
Yeah.
I now we've got this built. Now I'm not going to win the Everton argument.
We need to actually rejig it a little bit because, of course, we've got too many teams in the just staying up category. So we're going to play higher or lower now, and so we're going to see who is going to be outnumbered. So we'll start from the bottom because, of course, we know what's going to happen at the top. But are Sheffield United going to finish higher than Everton?
No.
No.
I agree. Everton, are they going to finish higher than Luton?
I think they will. They're bad, but they're not that bad.
Yeah, I would say they're going to, yes. Yeah.
So.
This is obviously not, this is, yeah.
There we go. Everton. Here we go. Everton, are they going to finish higher than Wolves?
Yeah.
No.
And I say no. Sorry, Matt. You're still outnumbered on that one. Wolves, are they going to finish higher than Burnley?
To be honest, going for it like this, I think this is pretty much right, apart from two teams.
That's why we're doing it.
Yeah, well, we could just cut out the middleman and just do the two teams.
It's like Bruce's Price is Right.
Oh, well, then carry on.
Wolves, higher or lower than Burnley?
Lower.
Manny?
I say higher than Burnley. Wait a minute. Yeah, I'll change that. Lower than Burnley.
Lower than Burnley. Yeah, I think lower than Burnley. Burnley, higher or lower than Forest?
Higher.
Lower.
And I think lower. Forest, higher or lower than Fulham?
As it is.
As it is. There we are. Fulham move into this category. Fulham, higher or lower than West Ham?
Lower.
Lower.
Lower, yeah. West Ham, higher or lower than Brentford?
Higher.
Lower.
I would go higher than Brentford. West Ham, higher or lower than us?
Higher.
Lower.
I go lower. I think they'll be lower than us.
So you
Us,
reckon Crystal Palace are going to finish 10th?
ooh.
And you
See, this
reckon
is a difficult one, isn't it?
see West Ham, my personal opinion, West Ham finish above both Bournemouth and Palace.
So we go down one, or do we switch across from against Palace?
I say let's be cheeky and put Palace in 12th.
Yeah, I would swap West Ham and Palace. Leave Bournemouth.
I'll tell you what. There we are. That was a rule change, wasn't it? West Ham higher or lower than Brighton?
Lower.
Lower.
Lower. Brighton higher or lower than Spurs?
Lower.
Lower.
Aston Villa Spurs higher or lower than Aston Villa?
Lower.
Lower.
Aston Villa higher or lower than Newcastle?
Lower.
Grudgingly lower. But I hope they win the Conference League. Matt, I'm holding you to that bet, by the way.
Newcastle higher or lower than Chelsea? Higher.
Lower.
That's
Okay.
two. One.
I've been sorry. Chelsea higher or lower than Liverpool?
Lower.
Lower.
Liverpool higher or lower than Manchester United?
Lower.
Lower.
I think higher, but there you go. Outnumbered again. Man United higher or lower than their neighbours?
Lower.
Lower.
And of course, Man City or Arsenal?
Manchester City.
Arsenal.
Arsenal. There we go. That is our tier list. I tell you what, that was great fun. You know, it's always great fun when we do these things.
Yeah, I agree.
That, you know, I tell you what, you changed that rule, didn't you? Keep us in the middle, but swap Palace and West Ham around.
Well, I mean, we had to rejig it, you know. I mean, sometimes they say that rules are meant to be bent, if not necessarily broken. So let's leave that be.
Well, there we go. That is our tier list on the screen for you all to see. So,
time we probably quickly looked at ours.
Yeah, how do they compare? Do you want to go first, Matt?
I'll go first.
Go on then.
Right, so here's my top, middle, and bottom.
Here's the drum roll. Go on, Matt.
Arsenal, champions. Man City, runners-up. United in third place and Liverpool in fourth place, which I think is how our predictions turn out.
It is, yes.
Top half of the table then. Chelsea 5th, Newcastle 6th, Villa 7th, Tottenham 8th, Brighton 9th, and West Ham 10th.
Which is
also
the whole top half is exactly
the same.
Yeah.
And this is where it's going to differ. Middle of the table. So Bournemouth 11th, Brentford 12th, Palace 13th. And yes, I do think Burnley will finish 14th.
Interesting.
Wow.
Relegation battle. Fulham, Forest, and Everton. And the relegated sides. Luton, Wolves, and Sheffield United.
Wow.
Burnley to finish 14th.
Sticking me neck out there, Manny, as you would say.
Mate, you've gone so far beyond the fence or where you were standing is like a dot to you right now.
The whole of your top half was exactly the same. Should we have a look at mine and see whether or not my top half was the same? Look at that photo. It's awful.
Yeah, Yogi Bear, look.
Yogi
Right,
Bear. That's a new one, isn't
here
it?
we go then.
Well, you're smarter than the average. That's not too bad, is it?
Here we go. So Arsenal are the champions.
Yeah.
Manchester City runners up. Liverpool third. Newcastle fourth. Fifth Aston Villa. Sixth Man United. Seventh Chelsea. Eighth Brighton. Ninth Spurs. And 10th West Ham. And then we predicted exactly the same of where Bournemouth is going to finish. Bournemouth 11th, Palace 12th, Brentford 13th, Forest 14th, Burnley 15th, Fulham 16th, and Wolves just surviving in 17th. And then the three to go down, Luton in 18th, again, not without a fight. Everton in 19th, unfortunately. Like I say, I just can't see him surviving. And Sheffield United are going to be rock bottom. Sorry, Sheffield fans. I think we've pissed off Yorkshire every time we've done this,
I
haven't we?
was just about to bring out a point just before we look at the last feature, which is a very, very quick one. But if you remember last year, I predicted Leeds to go down. And we had a message from a Leeds fan who said I was ignorant to the transfers that they'd made and how they were going to stay up and how we were going straight back down. But I mean, I don't know who out of us two is enjoying the championship come Saturday, but it ain't me. So
Exactly.
unlucky. So
Yeah, I also do seem to remember quite well a few Leeds fans coming for Bournemouth, and Craig had to deal with them on Twitter. Why couldn't you Cherries pick up your game against Everton? And Craig pretty much had the perfect riposte. Don't blame us. You had your chances. You didn't take them.
exactly.
And, Everton were just up for it. We gave it our best, but they were, I mean, you got no one to blame but yourselves. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
So,
you're in charge of your own destiny, aren't you?
Craig, you're spot on. You have cheesed off a lot of Yorkshiremen. I would say
We've done it again.
if you ever do set foot in Leeds or Sheffield or Barnsley or Rotherham or Huddersfield or wherever it may be, walk around with eyes behind your back, yeah?
Yeah, I shall do. I shall do.
Well,
Yorkshire doesn't like you.
should we have a look at the managers very, very
Yes.
quickly?
Very quickly.
The sack race. So, who's first of the chopping block? Craig, who do you reckon?
Marco Silva, I think, will be the first to leave, but on his own accord. Who's going to be the first on the chopping block? I think Sean Dyche, because I think as hard as he tries, I don't think Everton fans will expect a better season than last year, and they're just not going to get it. They're not going to get it. I think it's a case that now they've got Danjuma, but then again, Danjuma's never done anything in the Premier League. Like I said, Ashley Young is too old. I just think he had a better side at Burnley, and I think that's a poison chalice, that job.
Manny,
You bet.
who do you reckon?
I'm going to go for Steve Cooper to be the first one to be sacked, because I do remember saying that Forest should stay up. But there is, of course, a trend in the Premiership that when a manager starts to lose his way and gets to sack, more often than not, a new one comes in, gets a tune out of the players, and then just takes them to safety. That is what I think will happen with Cooper, because, in as much as Forest were able to achieve their target of staying up, for the moves they made, and believe me, they made a lot of moves before last season, they were hoping to finish higher in the table. I wouldn't be surprised if, given the number of players who obviously didn't receive anywhere near enough playing time as they hoped that they would get, I wouldn't be surprised if there'd be any kind of discontent. And whenever I see Mr. Cooper, he doesn't look to me to be a person who actually enjoys the job for some reason or another. So it could very well be that he ends up getting sacked and the new guy comes in and sort of steadies the ship and tries to get the best out of the players involved. And the fact that Jesse Lingard came in with so many expectations and walked away, I think Cooper probably would have been sacked if Forest had gotten relegated, but he survived. He lives to see another season, but it won't be for too long. He probably will end up being the first to get sacked. And the reason why I say that is because none of the new boys are going to see their managers sacked very early. Company will stay in. Heckingbottom will stay in. Edwards will also definitely stay in. And it could be one of the more established teams. With Dyche, he might stay beyond the December, January period, but then get sacked before the end of the season, and Everton might have to pull off a Hail Mary. But I just think Steve Cooper could be a candidate. I wouldn't also want to rule out Julian Lopetegui. I don't see Marco Silva getting much of the getting the sack. I really think. It's an interesting call you've made there, Craig, when you say that he could leave on his own terms. I wonder what would prompt him to make that drastic a decision. I just don't know. And so Steve Cooper is my pick to get sacked.
Yeah, that's the same with me. Steve Cooper. I just think he's had a lot of players at Forest that's at his disposal, and I just think that if it don't work out within the sort of first 10 games or so, I reckon he could definitely be walking on a bit of a tightrope. Might not even be that long. I don't think I think their owner definitely wants improvement on last year. But yeah, that's my money's on Steve Cooper. But let's have a look at the odds. So favourite is at 2-1. Your friend, Julian.
Yeah. Lopetegui 2-1.
Yeah.
David Moyes 6-1. That's a surprise one. Steve Cooper 9-1. Paul Heckingbottom 8-1. Marco Silva is 12-1. Roy Hodgson and Iriola, as well as Rob Edwards 14-1. Sean Dyche at 16-1. Postecoglou, I think that's how you say it, 20-1. Company 25-1. Frank at 25-1. Pochettino 33-1, along with Klopp. Eddie Howe 25-1. Ten Hag is 33-1. Emre 33-1. Zerbi 33-1. Pep Guardiola 66-1. Arteta 50-1. And no manager to leave 500-1. Basically, that's not happening. So somebody's going to get sacked. Who will it be?
It could. Yeah, I think there will be a sacking, because especially if we see an established club struggling with relegation, then there will be some changes. Could be Cooper, could be Moyes, could be Lopetegui. I wouldn't even rule out David Moyes, mind you. And that's why I think Moyes should have left when he had the chance.
Who would have expected Scott Parker, though, last season to be the first one?
He was walking a tightrope, wasn't he, with his comments, let's be honest.
Yeah. But at the start of the season, you wouldn't have expected it, would you?
No.
It was a decision that I think had to be made because the team just weren't playing very well, and it was probably a good thing that he made those comments. I wonder if, when history looks back on him, he'll be viewed as a martyr who sacrificed himself for the greater cause.
Quite possibly. Well, that concludes our tier list. Do let us know if you agree, if you disagree. If you're angry in Yorkshire, Liverpool, or Luton, and you feel that you could do better, feel free to send in your tier list in the comments below. But until the next show, up the cherries, and we'll see you then. Thank you for joining us.